Let's start off with a total icon from the Wild West. She was a national sensation, even when she was alive. That's because her name became associated with wild tales of adventure. I'm talking about Calamity Jane. Here's the thing, I thought calamity was like an STD. Apparently, it's another word for disaster, and her reputation was more of like a PR move invented by Jane herself. So why did Jane the Disaster leave such a mark on American history? On May 1st, 1852, Martha Jane Canary was born in Princeton, Missouri. She was the oldest of 6 kids, and there's not a lot known about Martha's mom, but it was known around town that her dad had a pretty bad gambling problem, which is never a good thing, especially when you have 6 kids to feed, but it happens, I guess. Martha's childhood is pretty much a black hole of information. There's just not a ton there, but we do know that when Martha was 13, she and her family packed their stuff and left town. In 1865, the Canary family made their way west. And during their 5-month journey across the country, Martha fell in love with hunting animals and going on little adventures. And this taught her a few things. I know, a 5-month journey? It's like the Oregon Trail. Martha said herself, quote, "By the time we reached Virginia City, I was considered a remarkable good shot and a fearless rider for a girl of my age," end quote. This must have been frustrating, or it was helpful. Like, Martha, make us another raccoon hat. You know, it's cold up in here. Anyway, the family arrived in Virginia City, Montana, but over the next year, life as Martha knew it completely changed. In 1866, Martha's mother passed away from pneumonia, and a few months after that, her dad also died. So at 14 years old, Martha was forced to grow up real quick. She became the head of the household, taking care of her 5 younger siblings, and she had to figure out how to make money fast. Martha moved the family to a place called Piedmont, Wyoming, and to make ends meet, she took on a job as a cook, a dance hall girl, a dishwasher, and even a nurse. Wow, I know. She did it all. Then around 1869, she found a job as a sex worker at Fort Laramie. Now, sex work was big business back in the Wild West, especially in a place like Fort Laramie. I mean, it was a stop on the Oregon Trail, and it was a military location, so there was lots of men coming and going. Sex work was allegedly one of the more lucrative jobs Martha could have, and instead of being chained to a husband, forced to do housework for no money, sex workers had more say in their freedom. Yes, of course, there were big risks, but some experts think Martha could have been empowered by this freedom. As Martha got older, she became a tall woman with a, quote, masculine build, and she realized that she actually could take advantage of this. Dressing as a man allowed her to work in places that didn't hire women and do work that she actually wanted to do. Not only this, it also helped her live a life with more adventure. In 1872, at 20 years old, Martha joined the Army as a scout, which was a job only men could hold at the time. And Martha was able to get away with this because she was, quote, disguised by male clothing, and also worked under a fake name. It was at this time that Martha earned the nickname she became famous for, Calamity Jane. Now here's the story according to Martha. When she was in the Army, she and her squadron were sent out to stop a Native American uprising. They were out in battle for several days, and a few soldiers were killed along the way. Now, at one point, Martha and the guys were ambushed. They all climbed onto their horses to get the hell away. But Martha saw that her captain had been shot, and he was losing consciousness and was about to fall off his horse. So Martha turned her horse around and galloped back to her captain as fast as she could. She was like dodging enemy fire the whole way. So she got there just in time to catch her captain before he fell to the ground. She then lifted him onto her horse and then rode away to safety. While he was recovering back at the fort, her captain allegedly said, "I name you Calamity Jane, the heroine of the plains." Now, this is a story that Calamity told, Now, others believe she got the nickname because she would warn men that they would court Calamity if they offended her. She was essentially threatening to ruin them if they bothered her. So I kind of love that too. Unfortunately, Martha was fired from the army when they discovered that she was in fact not a man. You know, it's like Mulan, kinda. And when the media finds out that she's a woman, that's when they started creating wild stories about her. And she's like, yeah, I did that. And she starts to lean into this Calamity Jane persona. Karen R. Jones, author of The Many Lives of Calamity, said Martha was well known in the, quote, rough and ready settlements of the Western Plains for dressing in men's clothes, a taste for liquor and wanderlust, and a tendency to shoot off her mouth and her guns. I'll tell you what, Calamity Jane sounds like a good time, am I right? Great. By 1876, America was about to fall in love with Calamity Jane. That year, she moved to Deadwood, South Dakota. This would become the place she called home for the rest of her life. People were striking gold around Deadwood, so Calamity found work there driving big wagons and hauling equipment to mining camps. Local news reporters who were covering the gold strikes lost their minds when they saw Calamity. I mean, here was this tall woman, dressed like a man, and doing work for a man. This was very shocking at the time. One journalist who met her said she, quote, has the daring and courage of the lion or the devil himself. So these reporters started publishing accounts of Calamity Jane in the paper, and people loved the stories about her. And then a writer named Horatio N. McGuire wrote a booklet called The Black Hills and American Wonderland. In this booklet, he wrote a vivid account of this wild woman of the West, and it launched Calamity Jane to national fame. So her story was for sure exaggerated and sensational, but people don't care, you know? I mean, this woman was real, and she was as daring as a devil, and that's all that mattered. Calamity Jane really enjoyed this newfound fame. In fact, she started to add her own stories to the tall tales of Calamity Jane. And at one point, she said that she was a writer for the Pony Express, which was an early version of the U.S. Postal Service. Calamity said tons of writers before her got held up at gunpoint and robbed of the packages and money they carried, but not her. She said, quote, my reputation as a writer and quick shot was well known, and they knew I never missed my mark. She even claimed that she was an Army scout for General Custer in Arizona back in 1871. And this caught people's attention because Custer was a famous American Army general during the Civil War. And during these travels with Custer, Calamity said that she had tons of dangerous missions to perform. And she survived all of it because she said, quote, I was considered the most reckless and daring rider and one of the best shots in the Western country. Sounds great. But the problem is, in 1871, General Custer was never in Arizona, and neither was Calamity. Oops. But the tall tales only got taller, and Calamity's reputation became larger than life. She liked to make her presence known wherever she went, and apparently one of her favorite things to do was to get drunk and shoot up a saloon. I mean, what else are you gonna do back then? Shit, you know? One man who knew Calamity Jane personally said she was, quote, drunken, disorderly, and wholly devoid of any conception of morality. At the same time, she was known to be generous and kind-hearted. There was a smallpox epidemic in Deadwood, and while most of the town wanted nothing to do with the sick people, Calamity Jane spent time nursing and comforting them. Then, in June of 1876, she met a man named Wild Bill Hickok while they were traveling in the same wagon train. Now, Wild Bill here is a character who could have his own story, but he was a soldier, a lawman, and a gunslinger, a gambler, an actor, and was involved in tons of gunfights. He liked to exaggerate stories about himself almost as much as he loved drinking heavily. I mean, just like Calamity. And when these two met, I guess they just hit it off. It was like they were made for each other. Between the partying, the national attention, and their reputations, they could relate to each other on a different level. So for about 2 months, they became very close. So close that some believe they were making sexuals. And what happened next completely changed the course of Calamity Jane's life. So Wild Bill Hickok was murdered on August 2nd, 1876. He was shot in the back of the head while playing poker. And if the rumors of their romance are true, it makes sense why Calamity was totally devastated when Wild Bill was killed. I guess she was actually there when it happened. Calamity Jane said she went after the killer with a meat cleaver because she left her guns at home, but I guess the guy eventually got away. Calamity was depressed after Wild Bill's death. She felt like there was nothing left for her in Deadwood. So she hit the road and spent the next decade living on the frontier and shacking up with a few different cowboys, I guess. In the late 1880s, Calamity returned once again to Deadwood. And this time she had a small child with her and she told people it was her daughter. But I guess they didn't have a dime to their name. So the town put together a little fundraiser to help send Calamity's daughter to a Catholic boarding school. Turns out the fundraiser was a success. I don't know how much money they raised, but what I do know is that Calamity took that money, she went, she got drunk, and then spent the most of it that same night. She's like, that baby, you know? I guess then she skipped town and just bye. Just really living up to that Calamity nickname. And to be honest, Calamity's best years were behind her. Her popularity was fading. After drinking binges, she started doing crazy things to get public attention, like riding a bull down Main Street in a town called Rapid City. By the 1890s, the Gilded Age was in full swing, but people still had some nostalgia for those lawless days of cowboys, gunslingers, and gamblers. So Wild West themed shows popped up, and Calamity had a bit of resurgence as a performer. In 1893, she appeared as a storyteller in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. I know, that's a real show. I thought it was just at Disneyland. Have you been? I've never been inside, actually, but I always see it. And then I keep on walking. But she was a part of it, great. Calamity did go on to write an autobiography about her life. She called it Life and Adventures of Calamity Jane. And there's some truth in it, but some historians say that most of the stories Calamity wrote in there are completely made up. I don't think it matters, really. I mean, she was just giving the people what they wanted, and they wanted Calamity Jane, not Martha Canary. After her years of hard living and heavy drinking, Calamity Jane died on August 1st, 1903. And it's believed that she died from complications of alcoholism. I mean, despite all her success in life, she died without a penny to her name. Even still, her funeral was held in Deadwood and it was jam-packed. After several hundred people viewed her body, they buried Calamity Jane right next to Wild Bill Hickok. Aw, so sweet. And even in death, Calamity Jane's story doesn't end, because there's one final twist no one saw coming. Was it a musical? No. That comes later. But when Calamity Jane died, one of the few possessions she allegedly had left was a bunch of unsent letters. They were in a bundle and some were addressed to a person named Jean. Then in 1941, Jean McCormick came forward and claimed that these letters were addressed to her. And Jean claimed that these letters proved she was a love child of Calamity Jane and Wild Bill. So, whether all the stories are true or not, Calamity Jane really did live up to her nickname. I mean, she really set the tone for what the Wild West was like back in the day. And she blazed the trail for our next Wild West lady, Annie Oakley. In fact, Calamity Jane and Annie spent some time together in those Buffalo Bill Wild West shows I mentioned earlier. Crossover, it's great. Annie Oakley. Have you heard of her? You probably have. Maybe you haven't. But let me tell you. Annie Oakley was born on August 13th, 1860 in Ohio. And Annie's early years were no walk in the park. I mean, you try being born in the 1800s. Her dad passed away when she was just 6 years old, leaving her mom alone with 6 kids to look after. Oh my God, like Calamity. The family finances were always extremely tight, and Annie's mom remarried and had another baby, but then this husband also died a year or two later. So now Annie's mom was back on her own with 6 kids and a newborn. So when she was about 8, Annie went to live at a house for orphans, the elderly, and the mentally ill. This sounds rough, but it actually gave Annie the chance to get an education. While she was there, she would learn to sew, which would help her out later in her life. When she was about 13, Annie went back to live with her mother and siblings. And by now, her mom was on her third husband. So the family finances, I guess, were a little bit more stable, but they were still very poor. Annie would take her dad's old Kentucky rifle out and hunt for rabbits and birds. And she got pretty good at it. I mean, to the point where she was hunting small animals for the local grocery store. The animals Annie shot were then resold to hotels and restaurants all the way over in Cincinnati. Now, this eventually made Annie enough money to be able to pay the $200 mortgage on her mom's house when she was just 15. Annie was just naturally gifted at shooting. And she apparently said, quote, "When it felt right, I just pulled the trigger." Wow. Yeah. So Annie is making some good money. So she decides to enter into a shooting competition in Cincinnati. And while she's there, she goes up against this guy named Frank E. Butler. Frank was, I guess, like a pretty big deal. He was a marksman who performed in a lot of Wild West variety shows. It's kind of like the circus, but with guns and cowboys. Anyway, during the competition, Annie hits all 25 targets. And Frank, he missed one, which made Annie the winner. Frank was so impressed that he ended up asking her out, and they started dating. And the next year, in 1876, they got married. Aww. Annie and Frank start touring around the country, performing in shows and shooting all kinds of things. And at first, Annie just acted as Frank's assistant. I know, even though she was technically the better shooter. But then Frank's partner gets sick. So Annie steps in and finally gets her time in the spotlight. From the moment Annie joined Frank's act and started performing next to him in the vaudeville circuit, people just loved her. She was known for being kind, professional, humble, and honestly, insanely talented with a gun. She even got the nickname Little Sure Shot from Sitting Bull, who was a legendary Native American tribal leader. Annie set herself apart from the rest of the other female shooters at the time. So instead of wearing skimpy, flashy outfits, which was the norm, Annie dressed pretty conservatively and made all of her own costumes. Annie said this was because she didn't want anything to distract from her shooting skills. These outfits didn't show much skin, but they were really cute. Cowgirl chic. Okay, so in 1884, Annie starts touring with Frank in the Sells Brothers Circus. After a year, they get an amazing offer to join the biggest show at the time, Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Now, this was huge. Buffalo Bill was the #1 marksman at the time, and his show toured all over the world and in front of like important people, like celebrities and even like the president. It was so popular that in 1893 alone, 3 million people went to the spectacle. In the Buffalo Bill show, Frank and Annie started out as performing partners. But as more people see just how talented Annie is, her fame starts to take over. Now, thankfully, like rarely do you hear this, but Annie's husband Frank wasn't threatened by this. He sees how talented she is. I mean, that's why he asked her out in the first place. So he takes a step back and decides to become Annie's manager/assistant. So supportive. Love to see that, huh? And overnight, Annie becomes the star of the Buffalo Bill show. It was her name on the posters, advertised as Champion Markswoman. Basically, Frank would only come on stage so Annie could shoot cigarettes out of his mouth. Yeah, that's love right there. Annie also shot glass balls out of the air, and she could split a playing card in half, like the skinny half, like paper thin, from over 30 feet away. She could also snuff out candles with the wind from her bullets and shoot the corks off of wine bottles. Hot. Annie performed her stunts in Spain, Italy, France, and even for Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in England. Apparently, the Queen called Annie, quote, "a very clever little girl." Okay, thanks. Like, way to downplay it. Very clever little girl. All right, cool. And everywhere Annie went, she proved that women were totally capable of not only handling firearms, but out shooting men. She was really passionate about encouraging women to learn how to use pistols, which were smaller and could be kept in their purses for self-defense. Annie once said, quote, "I would like to see every woman know how to handle guns as naturally as they know how to handle babies," end quote. Annie spent 17 years with the Buffalo Bill Show before she retired in 1901. And then something wild happened. Annie found herself in an insane legal battle. A Chicago newspaper reported that Annie Oakley had been arrested for stealing a man's pants to sell them and buy cocaine. Because this one newspaper printed it, I guess a whole bunch of other newspapers picked up this story and printed it too. But the thing was, the story was literally fake. Annie didn't do drugs, and she definitely wasn't stealing pants. And also, the story couldn't have been true because she and Frank were living in New Jersey at the time and not Chicago. So she was like, you know what? I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. Now, it turned out that someone had, in fact, stolen a man's pants and sold them for cocaine. Wild times, huh? But that person was a woman named Maud Fontanella. When Maud was arrested, she told the officers her name was Annie Oakley, but she spelled Annie A-N-Y. I guess she couldn't spell, but it's kind of amazing. I mean, I guess you could get away with anything before you had to carry a government ID with a picture on it, you know? The real Annie Oakley was pissed at all these newspapers for dragging her good name through the mud. So she decides to sue every paper that printed that fake story. And over the next 7 years, she does just that. She successfully sues 54 newspapers and wins. Go off, Queen, woo! When World War I broke out, Annie wanted to do her part. So she reaches out to the Secretary of War and offers to fully fund and train a troop of all-women fighters. She even offered to teach soldiers like how to accurately shoot. But both of these offers were declined. I know, you're like, why, right? Like, they think they're better than Annie Oakley? 'Cause she's a woman, you know, who gets her period. She don't know war. Now, at this point, Annie was almost 60, but she still wasn't an incredible shooter. She and Frank worked at the Pinehurst Gun Club giving shooting lessons. And sometimes they would even give little demonstrations. I know, could you imagine getting trained by Annie Oakley? On March 5th, 1922, Annie hit 98 out of 100 clay targets from 16 yards away. Some sources say that she actually hit all 100 targets. Now, this not only broke all existing trap shooting records, but it also proved that at the age of 62, Annie was still one of the best shooters in the world. So honestly, it's our loss that they didn't let her help out with the war. And then Annie Oakley went on to make sunglasses. I'm just kidding. Oakley sunglasses? Great. Annie Oakley passed away in 1926. And a few weeks later, Frank, her husband, passed away too. I mean, at this point, they had been married for 50 years. So sad. So sad. Okay. Annie left behind an incredible legacy. I mean, she paved the way for female shooters, female self-defense, and advocated for women to learn a skill that was mostly dominated by men. Annie actually made more than any other sharpshooter except for Buffalo Bill himself. Wow, incredible. She was great, wow. Good for her. Now, the last Wild West queen I wanted to talk about is someone you did not want to mess with. A lot of Wild West characters are kind of all talk, you know, but she was the opposite. She was one of the most dangerous criminals in Texas. She hid fugitives, robbed banks, cheated, stole, and did it all in a dress while riding side saddle. This is the true life of Belle Starr. Belle was born Myra Maybelle Shirley on February 5th, 1848 in Missouri. Now, she was born into like a pretty successful family. Her father was a farmer who actually made a big profit because his farm raised hogs, horses, and like tons of different crops. But after a while, her father, I guess, got sick of the farm life. It was kind of boring. So the family sold their farm and moved to a town called Carthage. Her father used the profits from the farm to open a hotel/tavern. And that was so successful, they opened up a blacksmith shop as well. And before you know it, the family businesses ended up taking up like the whole block. So you could say Belle was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. It's been said many times that she loved to flaunt that she was the rich girl in town, and she always had like a posse of people around her. I'm picturing Kate from Lizzie McGuire. Remember her? That's what she's giving me. She was described as well-loved and spoiled rotten, and she went to like this all-female private school, and she killed it when it came to her schoolwork. I mean, she was smart. But also, Belle had edge. One of her classmates gave an interview about her saying, quote, "Would fight anyone, boy or girl." At home, Belle had 4 brothers, so she had to learn how to fight. It was said she was very close with her older brother, who went by Bud. He made a point to teach her how to shoot guns, ride horses, and defend herself. Because of this, Belle became a master sharpshooter and horse rider. So her life was just peaches and cream. I mean, she was daddy's little princess until the Civil War broke out. There was a lot of fighting near her hometown over the war, and it was dividing families and neighbors, and everyone hated each other. Plus, different armies were coming into town, taking over and wrecking all of the businesses, and it was tense. Her brother Bud became something called a bushwhacker. I know, which is not a creep hanging out in the bush jacking off. No, nay. Instead, it meant that he hid out in the countryside, just waiting in a bush so he could shoot at people trying to take over the town. Bushwhacker. Yeah. He was known to shoot at, harass, rob, and even murder people. Even though Belle was just a teenager, rumor has it that she was actually a spy for the bushwhackers. Quote, Belle allegedly volunteered to spy on the troops through her social circles and returned the information to her brother. Rebels rode into town and burned everything to the ground. And by 1864, the war had totally destroyed her hometown and everything her family had built. Her family and community were torn apart. And then the worst thing possible happened to Belle. Yes. Her brother Bud was shot and killed by federal troops. Now this totally broke her. Now the day of Bud's death, Belle vowed to get her revenge for her brother. Now we don't know exactly what she was going after, but we do know that this tragedy completely shaped her personality. Her family packed up the few belongings they had and took the long ride to Texas. They spent months on the trail. I mean, it was rough. At the same time, a bunch of Bud's old friends rode into town, and they were part of a gang called the James Younger Gang. Okay, so this gang, they robbed a bank, and they needed somewhere to hide. They knew that they could count on Belle since she was allegedly a spy for their side. Maybe it's because they reminded Belle of her brother, or maybe it's because she was a secret bad girl. Belle started to hang out around bank robbers and criminals after this. She once said, quote, "I am a friend to any brave and gallant outlaw." I mean, they were her people. Belle reconnected with an old friend from back home. His name was Jim Reed. So Jim was a bad boy. He was known for robbing banks, and Belle was into that. The two of them actually had a kid together, a little girl named Rosie Lee. So he tried to clean up his act for the sake of his family. But the normal life, it wasn't working for Jim. He and Belle were strapped for cash, but he knew if he robbed a bank, they'd be set. So he robbed a bank. But once Jim resumed that outlaw lifestyle, he just couldn't stop. He just kept doing illegal stuff. I mean, Jim even murdered a man during one of his crime sprees. So he, Belle, and their little daughter had to flee to California. In California, Belle gave birth to their second child, a boy named Eddie. And even though they were now 2 young children running around, Jim took his criminal activities to the next level. And Belle decided she was going to become an outlaw too. Jim joined several gangs, and one of those was the Star Clan. This is when Belle allegedly got very involved in these criminal activities. Apparently in 1873, Jim and Belle snuck onto the property of the Graysons, who were farmers nearby. They knew the farmers had $30,000 in gold coins, and it was just theirs for the taking. Now, rumor has it that Belle was dressed as a male cowboy so they wouldn't recognize her. They break onto the property and attack the Graysons. She and Jim tortured them by hanging them from a tree for hours until they gave up the secret location of the coins. And I guess now Belle was addicted to that crime life. She's like, oh my God, that was so fun. Because the very next year, she robs a stagecoach, which, you know what that is, no? It's one of those old wagony cars that they used to ride in the Victorian era. Yeah, she robs that shit. Now, Belle needed to be more careful because there was like a warrant out for her arrest. But here's the thing. She didn't really give a shit. She knew she could outshoot anyone who came near her. But the same couldn't be said about Jim. In 1874, Jim was shot dead by the authorities. I mean, just like Belle's brother. So she's like, no, no. Belle found herself a widow with 2 children and a warrant for her arrest. So she turned to someone she knew, one of Jim's friends, Sam Starr. And he was a member of the Starr clan. So the two, I guess they fall in love, maybe they don't, but they end up getting married. And this is where she gets her iconic last name. Since Sam was Cherokee, they lived together on Cherokee land. This meant the authorities were not allowed to mess with them because Cherokee land laws trumped the local law. So Belle and Sam used this to their advantage. They would take in any outlaws who needed a place to lay low until heat got off of them. The two of them were very well known in the outlaw community. They would also commit all these crimes in town and then race back home knowing that they could hide out from the authorities. And apparently the two of them had this whole operation going. Belle would lace herself into one of those sexy little Wild West dresses, and she would jump on a horse and she would ride into town, And apparently Belle was hot, okay? She was a babe. So she'd ride up to a man, side saddle, and pretend to be this gorgeous little damsel in distress. She's like, oh my God, officer, I don't know how to use this gun. It's just so heavy. How can I use it to protect myself, officer? I dropped my gun. I'm so silly. She knew what she was doing. Now, while she was doing this, Sam Starr and his gang would be robbing the men blind. Yeah, they'd take their money, their horses, and honestly, anything they could get their hands on, while Belle was playing dumb. I love it. I just don't know what I'm doing. It's so crazy. I'm on a horse? I thought this was a donkey. That's so crazy. I just don't know. It's so hot, huh? So they would rob, right? And she'd be that's so crazy. And then she'd speed off, still riding side saddle, holding her gun perfectly. And then the men would realize that this was a freaking act. They're like, oh, fuck. I mean, I was impressed. Side saddle? Have you seen Princess Diaries 2? You know how hard riding side saddle is? Good for her. So she became known as the Bandit Queen because she'd steal people's stuff before they even knew what hit them. She knew how to talk her way out of trouble or pay off the right people to get her friends off the hook. Now, Belle did this for years without breaking a sweat. But, one day she ran out of luck. A local judge found out about Belle and Sam's little crime scheme, and she and Sam were sentenced to a year in prison. A whole year. There were 19 other convicts serving time in this jail, and Belle was the only woman. After 9 months, the judge let Sam and Belle out for good behavior, saying he hoped they would, quote, decide to become decent citizens. And of course, they were like, oh my God, yeah, we won't do anything anymore. Pinky swear. But they immediately went back to the same old stuff. She and Sam went back to stealing horses, and they even started blackmailing people for money. Belle was arrested several times after her prison sentence, but never convicted of anything more. She always managed to get away with it. But then, in 1886, tragedy struck again. Sam was killed in a gunfight. Damn. So Belle was like, you know what? Third time's a charm, right? So she marries Sam's brother, Bill July. What a name. These people, right? Sam Star? Bill July? The fuck is going on? After this, she was said to, I guess, calm down a bit. I mean, she was getting older, and all that crime was just, like, exhausting. Or maybe her boobs started to sag. We don't know. But when she turned 40 in 1888, she made an announcement, essentially saying outlaws were no longer allowed on her property. I mean, they were bringing too much trouble, and she just wanted a soft life. She was ready to live the rest of her life peacefully without any trouble from the law. But then on February 3rd, 1889, it all came to an end. Belle was riding into town so she could pick up a few things from the store when suddenly, gunshots rang out. Belle was shot from behind in the back, neck, shoulder, and face. And then, her horse freaked out from the noise, right? So Belle was thrown to the ground. Just drama. Not long after, Belle was found dead. She bled out from her wounds on the side of the road. Because Belle had beef with so many people, they never figured out who did it. People thought maybe it was a former lover, an outlaw she pissed off, or maybe even her own son. What? Yeah. Apparently they had been feuding. But I mean, she pissed off a lot of people, so it really could have been anyone. I mean, her killer was never identified. And in the years after her death, her legend just grew and grew because so little was actually known about her. She was a very private outlaw. I mean, she didn't brag like so many of the men she worked with. In fact, she only ever talked about herself publicly a few times, despite being a local legend. She once said, quote, "I regard myself as a woman who has seen much of life." Wow. And I think that sums her up perfectly. And honestly, all of the other women too. I mean, they've been through some stuff. The whole reason I wanted to do this episode was to learn about women in the Wild West, Because we usually see them in shows and movies as these sad, quiet wives waiting for their husbands to come home from the frontier. Or it's a musical, like Calamity Jane, that makes the whole Wild West era look way more fun than it actually was. I just wanted to know, some truth about some badass women. And after learning about these three women, I keep thinking to myself, who else is out there? If you know of any cutthroat Wild West women I missed, let me know in the comments section down below. Now, speaking of uncovering the truth behind famous stories, baby girl Lisa, listen, you are going to flip. Because next week, I'm bringing back a dark history favorite, an episode that examines the stories and films that defined our childhood. Now, these stories seem innocent at first, wholesome even, but the true story is much, much darker, weirder, and just plain horrifying. We'll be talking about the true stories behind Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and Alice in Wonderland. So I'll see you next week for the Dark History of Disney, Part 2. Woo! Well, friends, thank you for hanging out with me today. You can join me over on my YouTube where you can watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs. And while you're there, you can also catch my murder, mystery, and makeup. And don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below because I'd love to hear your guys' reactions to today's story. Now, let's read a couple of comments that you guys have left me. Bubbles, Easy Blonde, great name, left us a comment saying, Joan Crowford rules. So glad Joan and Paul are helping with the sponsor blurbs. Yeah, okay, I thought that you were just gonna give credit to Joan and not me because I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't even do anything. But yes, I know, finally these two are pitching in and getting to work, right? Great job, you guys. Great job. Desolate One left a comment on our Postal Service episode saying, quote, I'm a letter carrier. Sure, we don't deliver babies anymore, but we'll deliver cremated remains all day long. Oh God, I never thought about that. That's so sad. All I have to say is thank you for your service. You're doing great work out there. Oh, it's dark. Haley Sargent 7122 said, I am obsessed with you. Oh my God, thanks. And your positive spin on dark things. Can you do an episode on the London Bridge? You touched on it years ago with creepy nursery rhymes, and I must know more. I love that Fergie song. Remember? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Haley. That was so sweet. You know, one time I went to London and I thought the London Bridge was the cute one with all the lights and stuff. And then I posted it on my Instagram story and everyone's like, you idiot, that's not the London Bridge. Turn around. And I turned around and it's like this ugly brick bridge. And I was like, that's the London Bridge? Yeah. It's like that Fergie song really lied to me. But I would like to know the history of the London Bridge. I think that's a good idea. And why is there's like a London Bridge in, is it like Arizona or something? What is that about? Why is it there? Okay, I got questions, which means you're onto something. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm gonna go listen to Fergie. I love you guys for watching and also for commenting. Keep on commenting, bring them on because maybe you'll be featured, maybe. And hey, if you don't know, Dark History is an Audio Boom original. A special thank you to our expert, Dr. Sue Matheson, professor at University College of the North in Manitoba, Canada, specialized in the Wild West and the Western. And I'm your host, Bailey Sarian. I hope you have a good rest of your day, you make good choices, and I'll be talking to you next week. Goodbye. If you know anything about me, you know I've brought up Lisa Frank a handful of times, and I've said I need to do a story on her, so I had to do it. I had to, okay? So that's why I'm doing this story. Great. I've always been super fascinated with the Lisa Frank brand because it was something I honestly couldn't have as a kid. We just couldn't afford it. You know, it was kind of it was really expensive, actually. So when I was younger, we would go to Yarget. You know, rhymes with Yarget. And we would go down the school supply aisle and I would just kind of stare at the Lisa Frank stuff and just obsess over it. I wanted it so bad. Everything was so cute. And then as I got older, I just got more curious, who the hell is Lisa Frank? You know? So I did some research and she's a very, very private person. I could only find 2 pictures of her on the internet. I think there's only 2 pictures of her available, which is fine. Good for her. She's very private. So I was intrigued, and the more I looked into the brand's story, the more I was just sucked in. Drama. It's not the stuff you'd expect from a company famous for their happy rainbow animal vibe. I'm talking cocaine, alleged affairs, never-ending lawsuits, a private jet, and the cherry on top, a dancing ballerina bunny. Which, not what you would expect, right? Is it history, you ask? Yeah, hello, this is American history right here. The Lisa Frank Company, an icon in the 90s. That's history? Come on. Hey, Paul, did you ever have any Lisa Frank school supplies? He said no. Okay, so I opened up my dark history book to the Lisa Frank chapter because there's definitely one in it, of course. And let's get into today's story. So, according to an article in Jezebel, Lisa grew up in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, which ranks as one of the top 5 wealthiest cities in the United States. You'd want to go to this neighborhood on Halloween, you know, because they're the ones handing out the full-size candy bars. You know that neighborhood. She's there. Lisa's father ran a company called Detroit Aluminum and Brass. Now, this was a family company that made car parts, but also a little fun fact, they made parts for tanks during World War II. The business was super successful, to say the least, and the family was very well off. Daddy's got that war money, honey. We don't know too much about Lisa's mother, but what we do know is that she was very crafty, artsy. She seemed like a very creative woman. She made pottery, and along with Lisa's father, she encouraged her daughter to get into the arts. She would put her in art classes, provide her with coloring books and crayons, and just have fun. She and Lisa's dad gave Lisa a loom for her 12th birthday. And if you're like me, you're like, what the hell is a loom? Because I didn't know what a loom was. It's a large device used to weave cloth and tapestry to make blankets and etc. Which, who the hell gets a full-size loom as a child? Rich people stuff, you know? Growing up, Lisa said that she was a total girly girl. She read, she did artwork, anything girly, whatever that means. And over the years, she got pretty darn good at painting. In high school, which, side note, she attended this really fancy school in Michigan called Cranbrook School of the Arts. And it looks exactly, not even kidding, like Hogwarts. It looks insane. I'm like, this is a school? My school had like trailers and stuff, you know? What the hell? Anyways, her classmates also, pretty much they all came from very wealthy families, and she was rubbing shoulders with the sons and daughters of multimillionaires, CEOs. I mean, you get it. Lisa, based off observation, was surrounded by money and privilege, it seemed like. During her senior year of high school, she participated in an art show with her fellow classmates. So, you know, an art show where students show off a few of their pieces and it's cute and you're like, oh my God, that's such a cute little flower. Like, you did such a good job. But I guess Lisa's art was a major hit because that night she ended up making $3,000 selling her paintings in high school, which by today's standards is almost $20,000. Can you imagine making that kind of money at 17? Good for her. Good for you. This art show success was a sign of a bright future for Miss Lisa. She found her passion in life, art, and she was ready to go after it. Lisa flies across the country to start college at the University of Arizona, and this is where things get a little sketch. So she's attending college. Great. And while there, some say this is when she started buying and reselling jewelry made within the local, like, Native American communities. Others say she was making the jewelry with them. We don't really know a ton about this period of her life, so who's to say what really happened? But what we know for sure is that she hones her business instincts at the University of Arizona. She's like reselling and making money. So Lisa's doing that, and I know what you're thinking because I was thinking it too, like, Lisa, babe, you can't borrow someone else's art and sell it as your own, honey. But that's what she was doing. Lisa claimed that she worked with the artist and, you know, they should be happy because she's giving them exposure. Quote, quote, quote. Which for those of us who are freelance artists, or maybe you've been a freelance, you sure as hell know exposure does not pay the freaking bills. I hated that. I don't want fucking exposure. I want my lights to stay on. You know? Anyways, Lisa thought she was helping the artist. Sure, babe. So by the time Lisa's 20, she starts her first brand, and it's called Sticky Fingers, which is kind of hilarious on its own. Sticky Fingers, because come on. She's technically like taking stuff and reselling, so that is kind of sticky feet. You get it. So what was Sticky Fingers? Well, Lisa, she was dabbling in her own jewelry line. She was selling plastic charm bracelets with little animal charms and cute little fruit charms and whatnot. They looked kind of cheap, but you know, this turned out to be a really big hit for Lisa because not long after, Sticky Fingers was being sold at Neiman Marcus and Bloomingdale's. Like, does she have good luck or what? Or good connects? Either way, the plastic bracelets were a hit. So much so that this led to partnerships between Sticky Fingers and Felix the Cat, Betty Boop, Mickey Mouse. I mean, the list goes on. And this is just an observation of my own, really. But she must have been doing well to get those kinds of partnerships, right? Mickey Mouse? Come on. I don't know what she's doing, but she's good at it. So the bracelets are selling like crazy. Lisa can't really keep up with all the orders. Plus, she's kind of feeling inspired to start another project. She really wants to make stickers. I know. It's totally random, but this is the 80s. And allegedly, I heard a rumor that in the 80s, stickers were like all the rage. You let me know. I was born in, no, never mind. So stickers are all the rage. And Lisa, she wanted in on the sticker industry. She's like, there's money there. I like art. I can make stickers, you know. And she had her eye on the damn prize. So Lisa decides to pivot and rebrand. Pivot! The company, Sticky Fingers, gets a new name, Lisa Frank Incorporated, which is kind of a weird choice for someone who wants to be or is extremely private. But then again, maybe she didn't expect for her brand to take off the way it did. Anyway, she's 25 at this time. She's kicking ass, and she's now making stickers. What a dream, honestly. Making stickers? Fuck yeah. I want to make some stickers. So within the first year of her new business, Lisa Frank gets a large order from Spencer's Gifts. Oh yeah, remember Spencer's? They had the lava lamps, the neon dildos. It was a real hoot. They're still around. Why does Spencer's always have that funky smell? Does anyone else notice that? Like that smell. I don't know what it is, but it's Spencer's. Let me know. Thanks. Anyways, this order from Spencer's Gifts, it wasn't just any order. It was $1 million order. Oh yeah, within her first year. $1 million at 25 in the 80s? Girl, just retire now. Get that boat, travel the world, live, laugh, love. Come on. In the late 80s, the brand expanded and started selling school supplies. She noticed in a sea of beige notepads and black composition books, there was an opportunity. I mean, you guys remember, school supplies were very basic, and nobody was making cute shit at this time. Lisa came in and started making colorful, airbrushed, imaginative designs. It was so different, and it looked like she was on acid when she made it, honestly. It was cool. Lisa knew her audience, okay? She knew what these kids wanted. Her loud, in-your-face products were a huge hit, and she was just raking in that dough. As a businesswoman in the 80s, I imagine a lot of people probably doubted her. I mean, first of all, she's a woman, okay? And women couldn't even get their own credit cards until just a few years before this. Yeah, women couldn't open their own credit cards until 1974. So, yeah. I imagine it was a little rocky for Lisa. I'm sure people doubted her, you know? But she pulled it off. I mean, she really saw a market where people hadn't seen one before. And it was such a smart business decision. Snaps to you, Lisa. At this time, a normal pencil would cost like 50 cents. But Lisa found a way to sell the same item, but with her cute designs on the pencil, for triple the price. So this was the beginning of the Lisa Frank empire that I'm sure many of you remember today. Man, you bitches with your rainbow panda trapper keepers. I was so jealous. I couldn't get anything Lisa Frank because it was too expensive. I instead got one of those like Walmart 5-star zipper binders. It was like, how does a zipper sound? Do you know what I'm saying? It was really embarrassing. I was like, Mom, it's not the same. I want the Lisa Frank one. But what about the 5-star? It's so much cheaper. I want the fucking Lisa Frank one. You know, that was me. I never got the Lisa Frank one, actually. I should probably live my childhood and go out and buy one. Duh, Paul. I should do that. Okay, anyways, back to Lisa. So Lisa once again had a booming business on her hands, and the company was expanding so fast that they had a hard time finding a location for their headquarters. I guess they moved a bunch of times before finally landing on a final workspace in Tucson, Arizona, which was like not your normal little office space. Well, like in my mind, not little, but like, you know, this shit was huge. It was 320,000 square feet of office. Do you know how big that is? Picture 5 football fields. That's how big it was. That's big. And the Lisa Frank headquarters was everything the kid in you wanted it to be. The outside of the building had rainbows and music notes painted on the walls. Looks so cute. The inside was filled with these huge statues of the iconic Lisa Frank characters, like the painting panda bear or the ballerina bunny. There was colorful furniture, there was murals, and Lisa Frank fan letters decorated the walls. It just looked like it was designed by kids for kids, like some kind of Willy Wonka acid trip. It's just cool, like goals. So from the outside looking in, like it seems like such a happy, fun, safe place to work, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to work there? I would want to work there. It looked like a dream. Surrounded by cute characters, glittery unicorns. Hello, hi. I mean, it all seemed so magical, like nothing bad could ever happen there. But if that was the case, we wouldn't be talking about it. By the mid-90s, Lisa was killing it. She's a household name. Business is booming, bringing in around $60 million annually. And she had hundreds of employees working for the company. They were just cranking out more and more products, drawing cute characters and rainbow and glitter. It just looked so fun. Lisa Frank, the brand, was at an all-time high, and kids were just losing their shit trying to get their hands on some of those school supplies. To some kids, carrying around those little notebooks was like a status symbol at their school. Now, back at the headquarters, by 1992, there's a new CEO in charge, a man by the name of James Green. I know. You're probably thinking, like I was thinking, like James Green guy. He's probably an Ivy League businessman that knows how to be a CEO, right? Oh, nay. He was hired back in 1982 as an artist at the Lisa Frank Company. And I guess a little hanky-panky was going on between Miss Frank and Mr. Green. And it must have paid off because before you know it, he's running the company. He had her digmatized, okay? And yeah, you could say James slept his way to the top, baby. Men can hoe it out too. Come on. James and Lisa would end up dating for over 10 years, and then they got married in 1994. It sounds like a cute little fairy tale. A couple of artists in love, running a multi-million-dollar company and wanting to start a family together. Like the American dream, whatever that is. Not long after their marriage, they had 2 children together. So with Lisa's hands full, she wanted to have a more relaxed role in her company. We don't know exactly why, but many believe it was so Lisa could be a stay-at-home mom, which makes sense, right? And her husband can run the company. It all happened like within the same time frame. So just an observation, not a fact, but I think that's safe to say. So with Lisa working from home, James, the husband guy, he was completely in charge of Lisa Frank Inc. And why not? He's been with the company from the jump, and Lisa must have trusted him more than anyone to steer the ship. So with James in charge, the day-to-day operations didn't have to be like run by Lisa anymore. I guess she would come by, she would like pop in every once in a while, check in, see how everything's going. Hey, everything good? Nothing's on fire? Great. And then she'd like leave. For the most part, it was pretty much all James all the time. He was left in charge of the hiring and firing, approving art, maintaining important business relationships with like their biggest retailers. And remember, Lisa Frank Inc. at this time was at the top of their game. People are freaking loving their products. I mean, everybody wants to work with them. They're in every store, making millions a year. You could not fuck this up, baby. You're at the top. But, because there's always a but, over time, employees started to notice a shift within the company culture. I mean, what happens when power and control gets to someone's head? I mean, the only person I can think of is Andrew Jackson. He just has really ruined my brain. I think, let me not go on that tangent. So, control and power getting to someone's head? You think that's gonna go smooth? Of course not. James, we're looking at you, buddy. Shit starts to go sideways. When Lisa's away, James does play. You know what I'm saying? As CEO of the company, James would spend money where he pleased, and he was spending. The cars, flashy. The house, huge. The jet. Oh yeah, girl, he bought a jet. Nobody asked him to buy a jet. I guess also their mansion was like neon colored and the neighbors, not big fans. So pissing off people right off the bat. And Tucson isn't a big city, and the Frank Green family seemed to stick out like a sore thumb because they were just very flamboyant and in your face. And while he was spending their money, the company was taking a huge hit. And this is where James starts to show his true colors. So, let me tell you, Paul, you listening? Okay, great. So rumor has it, James seemed to have a little anger problem. Like if you pissed him off, you better watch out. A chair might be coming at your head. I'm not kidding. I guess he was throwing chairs when he got angry at people, like he was in WWE. If he didn't like you, you would know, because he would give you a nasty little nickname. He wasn't even polite enough to say it behind your back. He would just straight up say that shit to your face, like, "Hey, ugly, pass me those unicorn stickers." And you'd be like, "All right, is that my new name?" ugly. He was just a dick, is what I'm saying. Maybe at your workplace, your boss starts the day with like a little company pep talk. When I worked for the company Shmeshmai, it rhymes with Shmeshmai, we would have a little team like meeting every morning and they'd be like, all right, we need to sell this much in numbers, baby. How are we gonna do that today? And I'm like, I don't know, I make minimum wage. Why don't you pay me more? And then maybe I could make you more, because, you know? Anyways, but that's not the point, because James, he also loved a company pep talk, but he ran his a little different. He liked to start the day at the top of the big staircase in the entryway and just yell stuff at the staff below. He's like spewing all kinds of nastiness for no damn reason. I mean, it was said that James loved towering over people, so much so that he told his female employees they couldn't wear heels to work. He didn't like people to be taller than him. His official reason for like not allowing heels was that it slowed down the workers. And like the women couldn't keep up with him, but just seemed like he didn't like anyone to be taller than him. Interesting. To be fair, there are a few accounts from previous employees of Miss Lisa Frank herself participating in her own verbal abuse. There was even a lawsuit brought against her for wrongful termination. Basically, whatever Lisa allegedly did was bad. I'm not trying to downplay it. And James, he was just Lisa to the 10th degree, as we'll see later. And the company was paying the price under James' control. You're probably wondering, well, how was James able to get away with all of this? Well, it seems like every villain has a good sidekick, and boy, did James find his sidekick. So we've got Lisa Frank Incorporated, home of the unicorns and sparkly dolphins. Lisa herself has stepped away to be with her kids, leaving her husband, James, in charge of the company. James is, I think it's safe to say, struggling? Yeah. His bad behavior is starting to have a huge effect on the company, but he's not alone. He's got himself a partner in crime, helping him do all the dirty work. This is where we welcome to the stage Rhonda Roulette. I looked her up on Facebook. She looks like a Rhonda. Hey girl. Now Rhonda, she started at the company way back in 1984 as Lisa's assistant. She was there for quite some time, to say the least. And shortly after James took over as CEO, an interesting promotion happens. Miss Rhonda is bumped up to vice president at Lisa Frank Incorporated. Rhonda must have had a very impressive resume because she also oversees HR, legal, and licensing. Oh yeah, she was in charge of a lot of big shit that maybe she shouldn't be in charge of. She must have been an incredible worker. Just a little observation, but if your company is killing it, has hundreds of employees, why would any business hire one person to handle 3 different departments? Eye roll. Make it make sense. It doesn't, but okay. Anyway, pretty soon coworkers are starting to notice that Rhonda and James, they seem very close. And an employee even saw them at the mall together on a holiday weekend, you know, hanging out, spending the holiday weekend at the mall with your boss, which doesn't sound that bad. But they're both married, and then rumors just start flying around the office that Rhonda and James, they're slapping meats. Rhonda was the one who had James's back in the office. She was there at every turn, very loyal to this man. She interrogated people on his behalf, and when James didn't want to confront someone, he'd send Rhonda. She did, again, lots of his dirty work, just firing people, intimidation, you name it, Rhonda was on it. When employees would come to Rhonda for help or questions, or maybe to report something to HR because, you know, they're being mistreated, Rhonda would simply tell them to just get over it. Rhonda, she was really good at keeping the employees in check. I guess everyone was like really afraid of her. Just get over it. Oh, that's all I have to do? Just get over it? Oh shit. I'm cured. Thanks, Rhonda. The worst part of all was that she was head of HR, and if you had a problem at Lisa Frank Incorporated, sorry, that was on you. The company even put out an employee newsletter a couple times a year with words of motivation and encouragement for their employees. There was like one month, I saw this picture online. In the newsletter, there was this cute little column full of instructions on how to be a good employee. It basically said, like, employees need to always be thinking about how to please their boss. Your boss can make or break your career. And if you have a bad relationship with your boss, well, that's your fault. You're not being loyal enough, sweetie. Just try harder. That's what it said in this pamphlet. Like, again, oh, that's it? Okay, great. Oh, and then we haven't even gotten to the cocaine. I mean, we weren't there, so we don't really know for sure, but previous employees would later say that Rhonda and James were, quote, pretty big into coke, end quote, which may explain the paranoia, chair throwing, the tantrums. Can you imagine? Remember, this is all happening in this really cute office with like rainbows and like glitter everywhere. And he's over here, James, he's trying to act like Scarface, but in Candyland. Rhonda and James were pulling shit like withholding paychecks, cutting commission rates, messing up people's 401k, rude, and even told an employee they couldn't take work off to go to a family funeral. Now, if you thought that was bad, get this. One day an employee left the office 10 minutes early, and when James found out this happened, oh bitch, he was livid. He was raging. There were even rumors that he instructed his managers to chain the doors shut so people could not leave. Could you imagine if your job did that? It kind of reminded me of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire. Do you remember we did an episode on that? They like chained the doors. They kept the employees in because they didn't want them stealing. Yeah, he's lucky it didn't end the same way. Yeah, that was actually an awful story, but moving on. So all of this is happening and the company's reputation was just in the toilet. Nobody had anything good to say about the Lisa Frank company, at least working for it. So of course, James wouldn't take any responsibility for the decline of happiness within the workplace. Instead, he just avoided blaming himself at all costs. He was notorious for pushing meetings with the art department and then blaming them when artwork didn't arrive on time. Oh yeah, he would delay approving products and then make excuses to the buyers. And it turns out that James wasn't just bad to work for, he was just toxic to work with. I mean, I guess he's consistent. I'm always trying to find a bright side to things, you know? I also don't think the cocaine, alleged cocaine, helped him at all. But I'm sure he was having a fun time. So the company internally was suffering from all the chaos. The turnover rate was crazy high. The entire staff basically quit and had to be replaced once a year. People were dropping like flies, and folks were talking. Anywhere you went in Tucson, word on the street was like, girl, you do not want to work at Lisa Frank. They chain the doors and throw chairs at you. You know? So nobody wants to work there unless you're like desperate. Despite James's best efforts to just destroy everything, people are still buying the products. I mean, sales are still very strong. And in fact, the company is approached to make a Lisa Frank television show, which like makes sense because they're on top of the world. And each of the like those colorful animal characters were gonna like have their own names and backstories. It could have been the next Care Bears. It could have been great. So what happened? James happened. Of course, you know this. For some reason, James and Rhonda fired the entertainment lawyer that Lisa brought on to help negotiate a potentially huge Hollywood movie and TV deal because they were like, well, we don't need help. We could just do it ourselves. Spoiler alert. They couldn't. The whole thing fell through and the project ended up dying. R.I.P. By 2004, important buyers like Yarget are starting to refuse to do business with the company because James is difficult to work with. You know, he got that title, difficult to work with, which you don't want that because then nobody works with you. So at this point, the company has low morale, high turnover rates, and is losing out on what seems like no-brainer business deals. It's unfortunate that we ended up with so many troll movies, but like no Lisa Frank show. We were robbed. Now, rumors that the CEO was sleeping with the VP and doing blow in the office were circling round and round. Honestly, sounds like a party. But it gets back to Lisa. She gets wind of it and maybe starts to catch on to the whole Rhonda and James situation. If there is one, allegedly. We don't really know for sure, but at the very least, she starts to realize it's time to take back her company and clean up the freaking mess that James made. Lisa decides to return full-time with the goal of bringing the company back to its glory days. But when she comes back, it was a very different place than when she left it. One employee said that the original work environment at Lisa Frank used to be vibrant and full of energy. But now it had turned into a place of, quote, intimidation and insecurity, end quote. When Lisa returned, James and Rhonda made it clear to the employees, you're either Team James or Team Lisa. Pick a side, bitches. Yeah, and this was serious, okay? They, being James and Rhonda, they were going as far as bugging phones and reading employee emails to find out which team these employees were on. And if they found out you were on Team Lisa, chairs coming at your head. You better watch out. You better duck. You know what I'm saying? For example, I guess the sales department was labeled Team Lisa, and communication from James and Rhonda basically stopped. And the sales team, they were suddenly only allowed in certain parts of the building. Jeez. Anytime someone from sales needed something for their job from Team James, they would be shut down and told, oh, why don't you go ask Lisa? It's just so childish. Awful. And a ton of the sales team, of course, they're going to quit because they felt like they can't even do their jobs. What was the point? Plus, everyone's being mean to them. Like, what is this? It just seems weird that James would sabotage the sales department, aka the department that's making the company money, because, you know, like, it seems like he likes money. So I don't know why he would do that. But okay. So when Lisa came back to the office, she wasn't just trying to bring her company back. She was trying to take her life back. In 2005, Lisa filed for divorce from James, telling her close friends that she could no longer put up with his emotional abuse. I mean, obviously none of us know what happens behind closed doors, but if James treated the employees like shit, I can't imagine what he said to his own family. I mean, she's divorcing him, so maybe I can kind of guess. When Lisa presents a divorce, obviously James pissed. And it wasn't because he was about to lose his wife and family. Nay. He was panicking because he was about to lose the thing that he seemed to love the most. Cocaine. No, I'm just kidding. Money. James, he was not gonna go down without a damn fight, you bitches. Lisa is back in charge of her company, but James is still working there as well. Honestly, it must have been awkward. He wouldn't leave. He wanted to keep his position, and he was being petty just staying there at the office. Lisa, she had the upper hand though. You see, back when their kids were born, Lisa made a very strategic choice to gift James 49% of the company's stock, which is great for him because if the company's doing well, then the money keeps rolling in, right? So 49%, it may seem like a random number, but it was actually very intentional and a smart business move on Lisa's part. She's a boss bitch, thinking ahead. She's got a plan. Lisa kept 51% of the company stock for herself, which makes sense because it's her company and it would make sure that she always had the upper hand within her business. We don't know if this was like in their prenup or whatnot, but if/when they got divorced, James had to hand that 49% right back to Lisa. So this is why James is like really holding out, because he's losing the 49% bleep blop bloop. That sucks. This is a side note because I didn't really know where to put it in the story. But in an interview many moons ago, James said, you can like see it on YouTube, James said that he was the creator of Lisa Frank. Oh, he was like taking credit for it. Very strange. It's just bizarre, this man. So I'm sure maybe you can imagine that he wasn't so happy, you know? He was going to lose everything. His family, the cars, the jet, the home, his golf toys, again, the cocaine, the power, and of course the money. No. You know, he's like, no, Lisa, no. He wasn't handling it well at all. I mean, what else does he do? He has nothing else to do. So James goes into like full-blown panic mode. He's like, Mayday, Mayday, okay? It was not easy getting James to step down as CEO. In order to officially fire him, Lisa has to hold a formal board meeting because he does own almost half the company. But this dude, he dodges the meetings for over a whole year. I mean, how the hell do you do that? You work in the same building. He's all like avoiding her, like, there she is. Hide. I just like picture James answering his phone. Like, he's not here right now. Maybe he's like wearing a wig, hiding behind one of those rainbow panda statues. How do you avoid someone for a year? By this point, the man is basically a squatter. He was posting up in the men's bathroom, taking the good stall. Lisa, sick of playing Where's Waldo, now has to go to the courts and get them involved in hopes to fire James. It was just this whole ordeal, stressful, I'm sure. She wanted him gone. So she sued him, and then the judge ruled in her favor. Yay. So James was finally forced to show up for this 2-person board meeting so Lisa could look him in the eye and say, "You're fired. Get the hell out of here and take your girlfriend with you, but leave the coke." She wanted to make a statement. James, Rhonda, and I guess Rhonda had a secretary. I just didn't want to like throw another name at you and confuse you. But Rhonda had a secretary, and I guess she was like involved in some shady stuff too. So all 3 of them, they get escorted out of the building by police. Lisa did this on purpose. This was a performance. Okay, they were gonna strut down every aisle so you all see what's happening around here. I love the theater, so I would enjoy that. Anyway, so they're all escorted out, and following that, Lisa makes sure that James never returns, and she makes sure to also get a restraining order against his ass. And hell yeah, it's finally over, you know? But it's too early to celebrate, because James was hiding in the bushes, plotting his next move. You get a lawsuit, you get a lawsuit, you get a lawsuit. Everybody gets a lawsuit. Guys, there was a hilarious amount of lawsuits. Now, I'm not going to make you go through them. No, I will not do that to you. It's a lot, okay? But I got you because we went through them. Let me just summarize like all the juicy parts for you really quick. So over the next few years, and yes, this went on for years. In addition to the nasty divorce, James sued Lisa, claiming he created all the company's content and characters. So if he leaves, the company should shut down completely because all of that belongs to him. Oh, and remember that jet I mentioned earlier? Yeah, he was upset about losing the jet. He wanted to keep it. So James sued the company for millions of dollars so he could repay the loan he used to buy the jet. Like, what are you going to do with a jet? You don't even have a job. And the lowest of low, he even roped in his kids, who were 13 and 9 at the time, to give him written permission to take their mom to court. Like, it's okay if you sue mommy. We're totally cool with it. You don't do that. Luckily for Lisa, the kids didn't end up doing it. But I mean, James really tried. Dragging his kids into it? Yes, he did. Sloppy ass. You sloppy ass. Now, let's not forget about our girl Rhonda. So she ends up suing the company, and it was messy. Rhonda said she was promised $2 million in severance by Lisa herself. Now, in addition to forging company checks for her own gain, it came to light that Rhonda was lollygagging on the job. She literally filed none of the paperwork required for her employees to have health care or their 401k benefits, which just like led, obviously, a lot of employees very upset. One of the reasons you get this job is because of the health care. Come on, like, and you're not going to give it to me? No. And you're locking me in the building? No, this is too much. So I guess before they were fired, Rhonda, her hubby, and James filled up 5 truckloads with Lisa Frank property that they stole and drove off with. Yeah, why? What are you going to do with that? Well, sell it, of course. I mean, they got that good shit, like those polar bear pencils. They're out like on the black market. That's where I get mine. And then get this, the money that they made off the stolen items they sold went straight into their pockets. Backstabbing little gross snakes. Ew, that sucks. You like make this big name for yourself. You sell really cute shit, and then you get taken advantage of by this man and his nasty. I kind of get it. And like, just to keep it 100 though, when I worked at a large electronic company that starts with a B and ends with a Y and rhymes with shmeshmai, on my last day, I stole a bag of potato chips on my way out. It was my last day. Okay, so I was like, you know what? Fuck this. But what I'm totally getting at is that kind of like this trio, they stole stuff because they were angry. I stole a bag of potato chips. So I kind of get it. I still feel guilty about it. I do ask for forgiveness all the time, but I don't know, it keeps me up at night. Okay, so I understand what they're doing. They're stealing to be like, fuck you, you know? And like, because I did that too with the potato chips, but they stole like a bajillion potato chips. Way worse. I don't know why I'm trying to relate to the bad guys. I don't steal. Thank you. Anyway, so these lawsuits, they end up going on for like 10 years. It seemed like James didn't really care too much about winning at all. He and Rhonda just wanted to bleed this company dry, take all their money with all the lawsuits. It's kind of like an abusive partner, you know, when they're like, if I can't have you, nobody can. And that's what they were doing. Finally, in 2007, the divorce between Lisa Frank and James Green was officially finalized. She had complete control of her company, and she was ready to make a comeback. It wasn't going to be easy, though. James had damaged the company's reputation very badly, and he tarnished many of their business relationships. The company was in like a deep hole, and Lisa had a lot of work ahead of her. And honestly, at this point, she really could have just like given up on the company and walked away, but she didn't. But guess what? Lisa Frank persevered. She's a bad bitch. She didn't want to give up for some strange reason. I mean, she could have, you know? So it's just like, girl, just take a nap. In 2010, Lisa ends up taking a very big risk. She reduces her staff significantly, and she agrees to do something that she swore she would never do with her brand. Lisa enters into a licensing agreement with a manufacturing company so that they can make and sell her products. This might not like sound major to you and I, but it was said that Lisa was like overprotective of her brand, a bit of a control freak, and that she never let other people make her products. She just wanted control. She wanted to know everything that was going on and have control of it all. But she wanted the company to be back on top, and they promised, this manufacturing company promised to help her achieve this goal. And in 2012, Lisa Frank does a collab with Urban Outfitters, which is a trendy like lifestyle retailer. And that was a huge hit. People were really excited to see Lisa Frank back out in the wild. Everybody was like hungry for the 90s nostalgia. It was just perfect timing. But the manufacturing company that Lisa's working for doesn't make good on their promise to put Lisa Frank back on top. And Lisa Frank sort of goes away for a while again because it's just not doing well. Oh my God, Joan has a cute little thing. Cute. Is that a trapper keeper, Joan? You would, you little rich bitch. Okay, so where are they now? These days, it's not clear how much of the company James still may or may not own. But what is clear is that he is not involved in like the day-to-day operations anymore. Throughout the years, James has moved on from the Lisa Frank brand and Lisa Frank the person too. And he found Jesus. Great. Jesus. He found him. And he started his own passion project selling artwork for Jesus, which honestly, it looks heavily inspired by the Lisa Frank art, but it's for Jesus. It's like, move on, dude. Just move on. Let it go. Try something new. On the brand end of things, one of Lisa's sons is involved in like the new era of Lisa Frank. And you think Lisa would maybe have learned her lesson about mixing like business with personal life, but I don't know. Old habits die hard. She ends up bringing her teenage son to like board meetings with her. She puts him in charge of the company Instagram. I think things are actually going kind of well, so he must be doing well. Fingers crossed that the family business relationship works out better than the last one. We wish you luck. In 2020, something happened. I don't know, the pandemic or something. But the Lisa Frank Instagram page was popping off. I mean, thanks to her son, who really modernized the brand's image, right? To date, Lisa Frank has continued to have successful collabs with popular brands like Crocs, which I didn't know, I missed that one. Morphe Cosmetics. She did a collab with some nail polishes. Also, the school supplies are making their way back onto the shelves. Like, the 90s are really back, you know? I kind of love it because now's my chance. Now is my chance to get a Lisa Frank thing. If you think about it, Lisa Frank has kind of inspired that 90s aesthetic that we still see in trends and makeup trends, all that millennial neon shit we like to buy. It seems like a really perfect time for Lisa Frank to make her come back because we're all craving that 90s nostalgia, like I said, yeah. But with the help of her son, it seems like she's got her finger on the pulse of what people want again. I think this whole story can be perfectly summed up through my experience of purchasing the Lisa Frank Morphe palette. When was this? Like a year or something ago? I was so excited to get it. I was like, oh my God, Lisa Frank. Oh, the younger Bailey in me was living. Okay, living. The palette itself looks like a Trapper Keeper, and I should have brought it. I don't know why I didn't. Got it. Boom. It arrived. I opened up the package, took out the palette. Bam. I got hit with the whiff of that chemical cheese smell. Do you know what I'm talking about? It smelled awful. It smelled like cheap makeup. It smelled like chemicals, just straight up chemicals. I was like, oh shit. I decided not to use it on my eyes, but I keep it on my desk just to look at it because it's cute, but that shit stinks. I just feel like that explains the company in a nutshell. From the outside, bright, cute, colorful, happy. Oh my God, love it. Inside, dark, corrupt, and just plain stinky. Look, Lisa Frank is back today. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors now, but we're glad she's here. Hi. But there's one thing we know for certain. What was happening in the 90s, what was going on behind the rainbow-colored doors was wild. A former employee put it best, saying, quote, I always found it ironic that Lisa Frank brought so much joy to girls, but was such a miserable place to work. It wasn't rainbows and unicorns behind the scenes. End quote. It's like rain on your wedding night. Right when you already paid. What got me really curious about the story is the facade, like what that employee said on the outside. Cute, adorable, love it. I want to work there. Put it in me, everything. And then you like go further and you're like, holy shit. You guys are all fucked up in here. I just found that very interesting. And obviously there's like no clear cut good or bad guy here. I think they were all kind of stinky. James and Rhonda were the absolute worst, but Lisa, she also had her moments too. And also, for as much as Lisa claims to want to be private, just in the background, going unnoticed, she sure does love to be on top. So I don't know, next time you're looking at your rainbow tiger Trapper Keeper, remember, cocaine is a hell of a drug. Well, everyone, a big thank you for learning with me. Remember, don't be afraid to be curious, ask questions, because you deserve that. I'd love to hear your reactions to today's story, so make sure to use the hashtag #DarkHistory over on social media so I can follow along and see what kind of shit you're talking. I'm gonna find you and be like, yeah, bitch, she crazy. I'll write you back. Oh, also, join me over on my YouTube where you can watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs. Come check out my background, it's cute. And while you're there, you can also catch Murder, Mystery, and Makeup, which is on Mondays. I hope you have a great day today. You make good choices, and I'll be talking to you next week. Goodbye. Long before she was known as Typhoid Mary, her name was Mary Mallon. So Mary was born in County Tyrone, Ireland on November 29th, 1869. She's a Sag, a free spirit, so this actually makes a lot of sense now. But at the time, listen, where she was born, this was one of the poorest counties in Ireland. So when she was only 15 years old, Mary got on a ship and headed to the United States, and she wasn't the only one. In the mid-1840s, tons of Irish immigrants were coming to the United States. And that's because back in Ireland, the country was going through the Great Hunger. Now, this is commonly known as the potato famine, where at least 1 million Irish people passed away, most from starvation. And those who were still alive, they were looking for a way out. Now, the population of Ireland at the time was like 9 million, and of that 9 million, 6 million depended completely or almost completely on the potato crop. And a third of the population was so poor that they lived mostly on potatoes. So when a mold wiped out most of the potato crop in 1845, it was catastrophic. Of course, there was other food, but people didn't have access to it. And the wealthy English landlords, they were harvesting crops and selling food to England and other countries. Pretty much everywhere but Ireland. It was f***ed up. 1 million Irish people died of starvation, and over 2 million people left Ireland just altogether looking for a better life. So Ireland ended up losing a third of its population in total. 75% of immigrants ended up in the United States. And by 1855, 80% of New York City's domestic workers were Irish immigrants. And pretty much anytime there's a big group of people from another country moving into a city, people just assume that the immigrants are here to take jobs and ruin things. So when this was all happening, most Americans were not very welcoming. In fact, if you were Irish, most people really disliked you, automatically. At the time, people would make jokes about the Irish being stupid, ugly, and dirty. I'm not saying that, that's what they were saying back then. There were political cartoons about it, just tearing them apart. It was ugly. Many Irish men found work doing labor, while the Irish women mostly got work as domestic servants. When I say servant, it's exactly what you're picturing. If you were working as a domestic servant, it was grueling work. It'd be 14-hour days you'd be working. And they would be the first ones up in the morning and the last ones to go to bed. And that was the world that Mary entered into as a teenager. Mary got a job working as a cook, which was great for her because it was one of the highest paying servant jobs that you could get. And Mary was really good at it. She landed a ton of different jobs working in multiple households for decades. By 1906, when Mary was in her 30s, the Warren family hired her as their cook. Now, she lived in their house in Oyster Bay in Long Island, and she would work there over the summer. But by the end of the summer, the Warrens' young daughter became ill with what was diagnosed as typhoid fever. Then that same week, 5 more people within the household began showing symptoms. So typhoid fever, what is it? I don't know. Well, let me tell you. It's an infection that's caused by bacteria. It's usually spread by water or food that's contaminated by fecal matter. And I know it sounds gross, but look, it's real. And it can hide under your fingernails, on your hands, or your skin. And then you wipe your nose, next thing you know, it's in your body. The disease would begin with a headache, you would get fever, and then you would get bloody, foul-smelling diarrhea. Then usually a rash would form, followed by a high fever, which for some could lead to death. Now, at the time, typhoid was terrifying because there was no cure and a vaccine wasn't discovered until 1911. Plus, antibiotics, they weren't even discovered until 1949. So if you got this, you just had to hope for the best and wait it out, Now, of the 11 people that were staying at that summer home, 6 of them got sick. It was mainly the workers, but not Mary. She never got it. And in fact, she appeared quite healthy. She showed no symptoms related to typhoid, which is kind of weird because everyone around her got it. Now, it was said that Mary was a stout woman with a robust, healthy appearance. She had dark hair, often pulled back or styled in a simple manner, with a round face and a strong, determined expression. Now, at the time, typhoid fever was really associated with poverty and filth. So, this town, Oyster Bay, it was very affluent and they never had an outbreak of typhoid before. So when the wealthy Warren family home had typhoid going around, it made no sense to them. They're we're rich. This doesn't happen to us, And not only was it deadly, it was low-key embarrassing. They're oh my God, we are not poor. This is not okay. When the owners of the house found out about the outbreak, they freaked out. The owner of the house was worried that none of the well-to-do people would want to rent this fancy home if they knew people got typhoid there. So he hired people to come and inspect where the typhoid may have come from before word got out. Apparently the house had been a wedding present, and if they couldn't locate the source of the outbreak, it's possible that the house would be declared a health hazard and then burned. So eventually, the homeowner was introduced to Dr. Soper, who technically wasn't a doctor, but he was a sanitary engineer. One newspaper described him as a, quote, a doctor to sick cities, end quote. Oh, yeah, I don't know how he got the doctor title, but he did. But whatever. So they call him up. So Dr. Soper, he comes out to the Warren home and he gets to work. He's like, I'm going to figure out where this typhoid came from. They check every corner, the water, they check everywhere. So he does a little digging. And then Dr. Soper finds out that the Warrens had recently changed cooks. The most recent cook was Mary Mallon. And it was odd because now she was missing. She was nowhere to be found. And she had left with no notice or explanation. She was just gone. It was like, oh, that's weird. Now, Dr. Soper is putting the pieces together and he's like, the cook was really the only new thing that was introduced into the household. And this cook handled food, which all the people who got sick had eaten this food. So Dr. Soper, after some time, it took him a while, he believed he had found the culprit. It was this Mary Mallon person. Now, after this, he was determined to find her before she got anyone else sick. So meanwhile, Mary was bouncing from job to job around New York. She was usually getting hired for a few weeks or months, then moving on to the next gig. At one point, Mary started working for a family on Park Avenue in New York City. And pretty soon, 2 cases of typhoid were reported. A maid and the daughter for the family Mary worked for. Now the daughter, she would end up dying within just a few days. And word gets back to Dr. Soper. Now, when he hears about this death, most people would be like, oh, that's sad. But he was like, oh my God, what? Typhoid? Where? He knew in his head that this was probably Mary's doing. So Dr. Soper, he hops in his little car. I don't know what he does, but he gets his butt over to that family home on Park Avenue as soon as he could. So he just shows up out of the blue, knocks on the door, and asks to speak to Mary Mallon. So she answers the door, and right off the bat, Dr. Soper is accusing Mary of causing the typhoid, getting people sick, and even killing someone. I don't know, maybe Dr. Soper thought she would just cooperate or apologize. I don't know what he thought, but to his surprise, Mary was she was pissed. She was pissed off. Could you imagine you're working at your place of work, and then someone shows up and starts making wild accusations that you killed someone in front of your employer? You're like, hey, whoa, now is not the time, So she was mad. She's like, what the fuck? So this guy is just making wild accusations, calling her a killer, and then he was demanding samples of her urine, feces, and blood. Again, I'd be like, excuse me, who are you? I don't know you. So Mary, she doesn't say anything. She instead grabs a carving fork and then lunges at Soper, who I guess just turns right around and he just gets the fuck out of there. So, Dr. Soper, he left the meeting empty-handed, and Mary was now feeling angry, scared, paranoid, and probably a little suspicious of the whole situation. So this first encounter really left Dr. Soper confused. He thought Mary would comply and hand herself over. He could not understand why she was so defensive. To him, he was only trying to offer her good medical attention. So now, after this, in his opinion, Mary was a menace to society. He's mad and he's determined. So Mary, she continues to work at the home on Park Avenue, and Dr. Soper, he knew this. So one night, he goes to the home and he waited outside. He's like waiting for her to get off of work so he could follow her. Yeah, okay. He's going full stalker. So Mary was walking home, whatever, and she stops at 33rd Street and 3rd Avenue where her boyfriend lived, a man named August Brioff. Now, Brioff was a former policeman, and he honestly, he didn't really have much going on in his life, I guess, based off what I read. I don't know. He drank a lot. He lived in a dirty apartment. He had a dog. And then other than that, he had Mary. Mary would often bring Brioff food and take care of him. It's kind of sweet. And when Brioff wasn't at home doing nothing, he would spend his days in a saloon around the corner. Now, so remember, Soper followed her here, and he was watching the situation from outside, a creep. So I guess he was spying on them for a little bit because he takes notice of Brioff hanging at the saloon, and he thought the best way to get to Mary would be through this guy. He was like, yeah, that's my way in. So Dr. Soper, he's like, you know what? I'm going to go make friends with this guy. So one day he goes to the saloon and he becomes friends with Brioff. Now, Soper actually wrote about this encounter and said, quote, I got well acquainted with him. He took me to see his room. I should not care to see another place like it. It was a place of dirt and disorder, end quote. So that's really nice of him, Okay, so that night, Dr. Soper went to the Brioff's home with him. And he decides, I'm just going to wait here until Mary shows up. Well, finally, Mary walks in. And right away, she was pissed. She was angry when she saw Soper waiting there for her. I mean, what was he doing? Stalking her? Leave me alone. She's like, what is this? What? So once again, Soper tried to explain to Mary that he believed that she was giving people typhoid. But Mary, refused to hear him out. She never had typhoid. How could she be giving it to people? He was incorrect. She had been in perfect health, and she would not allow anyone to come into her home and make such wild accusations about her. So once again, she, chased Dr. Soper out. So Dr. Soper, he felt like he had no other choice but to take the case to the New York City Health Department. He called Mary a, quote, living culture tube and chronic typhoid germ producer, end quote. That's so sweet. Wow. I mean, he doesn't really know for sure, but he really went for it, He was quick to tell everyone how big and strong Mary was. And it was almost like he wanted to have an excuse for letting this woman chase him away multiple times. Here's how he described her to other people. Mary had a good figure and might have been called athletic had she not been a little too heavy. She prided herself on her strength and endurance. Okay. Mary was about 5'6", so that's the monster of an athlete we're talking about here. I didn't look up how tall Soper was. He must have been, a little bit, maybe shorter. I don't know. But the New York City Health Department decided to send another doctor to help Soper, a woman named Dr. S. Josephine Baker. I know, I was like, what? Crossover episode? But no, there's no relation to the American-born French dancer, singer, and actress Josephine Baker, who we've done a Dark History episode on. No relation, not the same person, just the same name. What are the odds, huh? But they thought, the health department, they thought that maybe sending a woman might get through to Mary more so than a man. If a woman came up to you and was like, hey, I want to talk, you might listen. A man, you're like, get the fuck away from me. But they failed to mention to Dr. Baker that Mary might be a little difficult, you can say. So Dr. Baker, she's very excited. She's like, I'm going to Park Avenue to, collect some samples from this Mary woman. So she goes to the home, and right off the bat, Mary once again slammed the door in her face. So the next day, a horse-drawn ambulance from the health department was sent to Mary's workplace. Very dramatic. Then, 3 policemen, they show up, and they surround the house, and they're trying to block any of the possible escape routes. So they're doing that, and Dr. Baker, she rang the doorbell. Mary, once again, she answers. She sees them again, and she tried to slam the door. But there was a cop with Dr. Baker. The cop put his foot inside the door so she couldn't shut it. You know what I'm saying? So I guess at this point, Mary had turned around. She bolted to the kitchen and disappeared. She was gone. So Dr. Baker and the officer, they run into the house. They're chasing after her. They are asking the other workers in the home, where'd she go? Where'd she take off to? But they had no answers. So they're looking around. They search the closets, the basement, the living quarters, but they just could not find her. They would continue searching for 3 hours, calling for backup, but they got nowhere. So I guess Miss Mary, she had run out the door. She hopped a fence and she hid in an outside water closet in the backyard of a neighboring house. And she was just hiding in there. Well, the police and Dr. Baker, they eventually find her. And she was trapped in this room. She had nowhere else to go, So they got her cornered. And according to Dr. Baker, Mary had fought, she struggled, and she cursed while she tried to explain that Dr. Baker was trying to explain that she only wanted specimens and then she can go back home. That's all we need. So Mary again is refusing to comply with these people. So a policeman just ends up picking her up and they put her in the ambulance. And it was said that Dr. Baker sat on top of her the whole way to the hospital so she wouldn't escape. So once they got Mary to the Willard Parker Hospital, the doctors for the New York City Health Department finally got what they wanted: Mary's stool samples. So according to the first analysis of Mary's stool samples, they revealed a, quote, pure culture of typhoid. Ugh, so it was true. Typhoid seemed to follow her and she couldn't argue that. The health officials, they called her dirty, and now they were calling her a murderer. The doctors told her that she carried the sickness inside of her body and she was spreading it with her dirty hands. But this was I guess very, very insulting to Mary. She was proud of the work she had done. To her, she's thinking if I'm so sick, why did it take so many policemen to take me down? If I'm so sick, how come I don't have any typhoid symptoms? What do you mean I'm sick? To her, they were the sick ones coming after her like this. They were obsessed with her. She's minding her business one day, and then the next, she's locked up in a hospital with random people coming in and out making wild accusations. You're the sick ones. So with Mary being restrained at the hospital, Dr. Soper decided to pay her a visit. Oh yes. He's they got her. So he goes and he sees her, and once again he's trying to explain what they were doing and that nobody wanted to harm her, but also, in my personal opinion, it kind of seemed like he wanted you were right, Dr. Soper, from her. He wanted a you're right, but she didn't give that to him. Dr. Soper told her that these germs were most likely growing in her gallbladder, and the best way to get rid of the germs would be to get rid of her gallbladder. Now, when she hears this, she didn't have anything to say. He then told her that he wanted to write a book about her case. But first, she would need to answer his questions. And most of all, he wanted to know how many times she had caused a typhoid outbreak. And Mary's listening to this and she's now is not the time to talk about a fucking book deal, okay? I'm locked up in a hospital, what? Come on. No, she's just mad. So instead, she just gets up, she doesn't say anything, she locked herself in the bathroom. She didn't say a word to Dr. Soper. So between March 20th and November 16th, Mary was tested 3 times a week while staying in the hospital. Now, a few of those tests, they did come back negative, and nobody could figure out why. It wasn't consistent. So Mary claimed that because some of these tests were negative, she couldn't be the one infecting all these people, right? She's it's negative. It's not me. And she wanted to leave. She was still at the hospital. So she didn't understand why she was still being locked up if these tests were coming back negative. Well, Dr. Soper blamed Mary for her circumstances. He told her that since she had refused to help him or any of the other doctors, she had to be kept in this tiny room. They didn't trust her. She's probably going to run off and kill more people. So again, Dr. Soper, he tells Mary, like, there are a few things that she could do to stop spreading the disease. Like, for starters, she should wash her hands after using the bathroom. Now, to you and I, we're like, yeah, you should do that, maybe. And maybe she was. We don't know, but he assumed that she wasn't. To be fair, it would have been like extremely difficult for Mary to fully remove all of the bacteria from her hands, even if she was washing them often. Why, you ask? Well, in order to rid any of the typhoid bacteria she was allegedly carrying, she would have to scrub her hands under hot water for at least 30 seconds. And when I say like hot, I mean scalding hot water, because the typhoid bacteria can't be killed in less than 150 degree water. And washing your hands in 150 degree water isn't something that you can just do. You can't do it because you would get like third degree burns in a matter of seconds. So, gloves? Anyways, so even if she was washing her hands, you know, I don't even know why he was recommending it if she can't even wash her hands in 150 degree water. So kind of like shit advice. But okay, whatever. But Mary wasn't doing that. You know, she wasn't burning her hands off. So Dr. Soper kept recommending that Mary have surgery to remove her gallbladder because, again, they believed like it was living in there. But she didn't want to have her gallbladder removed. I mean, she didn't trust Soper. She didn't trust these medical doctors. She didn't trust the medicine. And at this time, like, most people didn't. So you can't really blame her. And again, these people had stalked and like kidnapped her. She's like, you're not going to have my gallbladder. Is this like a black market plan or something? I don't know. So Mary did not want to cooperate. So once she refused to not do the surgery and not help Dr. Soper with his book, this is when things were taken to a whole new level. So Mary was staying at this one hospital, right? Well, then they moved her to North Brother Island to be kept in total isolation so she could no longer infect people. Now, North Brother Island is a tiny little island smack dab in the middle of the East River in New York City. It's between the Bronx and Rikers Island. Now, this island was originally purchased like from the Dutch by New York, specifically to isolate people with infectious diseases. They built Riverside Hospital there so that patients could be contained and then also get treatment. And most people, they assumed if you were being sent to this hospital, it was most likely like you weren't leaving alive. Now, again, to Mary, it didn't make any sense to her as to why she's being kept at the hospital. She didn't have any of these symptoms of typhoid. She is confused, really confused. So they end up putting her in this little cottage on the island, and this is like where she was forced to live. Now, this little cottage, it's kind of cute. It's small, looks like a little hut. It was originally built for staff to live in, and it was nice. It had its own like living room, a little kitchen and a bathroom. It also had plumbing and electricity, so she was like allowed to cook for herself and just hang out by herself all alone. It was a very lonely place because she couldn't like be around anyone. So I guess like every few days she would be tested for typhoid. But other than that, Mary was just totally alone all of the time. Start to go a little crazy, I'm sure. So by 1909, 2 years after she was first taken into custody, 2 years, Mary decided, she's like, you know what, I'm going to sue the health department. So she wrote a letter describing her treatment and living situation on the island. Now in it, she described being tested multiple times a week and developing like terrible anxiety from being kept in isolation. She described it as being like a peep show for the interns and like the other doctors to like come and just look at her. She just felt like a caged animal. I guess her anxiety got so bad that one of her eyelids started to twitch and eventually became fully paralyzed. You know what I learned recently? This is a side note, it has nothing to do with anything. But my eye was twitching like a lot. And then my doctor told me it was because I was really stressed. I just didn't know that was a thing. So I could see this happening to Mary, you know? She's probably stressed, riddled with anxiety. I didn't know it could be paralyzed though. That's really scary. Anyways, so that happened. So in her letter, Mary wrote about how she was almost released from the island until another doctor said that she could only go if she agreed to have her gallbladder removed. But the doctors would flip-flop. It was like 1 week it was the gallbladder. The next week they would tell her the bacteria was in her intestines. Then they would say, oh, no, it's actually in the muscle of your bowels. And then they'd circle back and be like, no, actually, sorry, it's the gallbladder. You need to have that removed. So it was confusing. I mean, how could she trust what they were saying when it changed all of the time? So Mary just kept refusing surgery. So, time's passing. She's thinking a lot. And she's like, I want to prove that, I don't have typhoid. So she's like, hey, what if I have, an independent lab test my samples? Maybe these doctors here are, messing with me. Let me try a different doctor. So remember Brioff, Mary's kind of little boyfriend? Well, he was on the job. So he would take the ferry to the island, collect Mary's samples, and then bring them to an independent lab. Now, each of her samples came back negative for typhoid. She's like, see, I don't have it. Now, there are a few reasons the test could have been wrong. The samples could have been old. Someone could have made a mistake in the lab, or maybe typhoid just wasn't present in every single sample that Mary provided. But to Mary, this only confirmed what she already knew, that these doctors were making up lies to ruin her life. So she continued with her case, hoping to earn back her freedom. A little side rumor. People believe that William Randolph Hearst was the one who actually paid for Mary's attorney. But even with her negative test results and a defense attorney arguing her case, the court decided that the Board of Health was allowed to keep her in custody. Now to them, they were protecting the community. So Mary was sent back to the island, and she's like, shit, now what? I guess she started picking up little odd jobs around the place. I mean, what else was she supposed to do to pass the time? Now, there was one job she had where she was helping care for the sick children who were staying in the hospital. I know, at first I was like, is that a good idea? But, I mean, they're already sick, so... But I guess the kids, they really liked her. Well, time passed, and finally, after about 3 years of fighting for her freedom, Mary was allowed to leave the island. Oh, yes. So the doctors, they're like, you can leave, but we have a few conditions. They told Mary that she had to promise to never work as a cook again. I'm laughing because it's promise? Pinky promise? Okay. And then, so she can't work as a cook, and she promised. In return, the health commissioner offered to help her find work. Also, she would need to check in with the health department every 3 months. Now, this was mostly so they could keep track of her, know where she's living, where she's at, and if there were any typhoid outbreaks in that area, they could link it to her, essentially. So Mary's like, sure, I'll do whatever, And she agrees, and she was finally released back into society in 1910. Man, she's been through it. She's been completely isolated, Anyhow, so Mary was now 41 years old, and she was starting back at square one. She was able to find herself a job working as a laundress, but it didn't pay nearly as well as being head of the kitchen, So she tried to sue the Board of Health for keeping her prisoner and was seeking $50,000 in damages. But the judge threw out her case. So things are bad. And when it rains, it pours. And Mary's boyfriend, Brioff, he became very ill. He was having heart problems. So Mary had him admitted to the hospital. Now, sadly, her one partner in this life would die. Now, this just made her dislike the medical profession a little bit more. She was worn down, and she was at her last straw. She's like, look, I got nothing to lose at this point. No one is on my side. F this. So, Mary stopped checking in with the health department, and she completely disappeared. she changed her name, and she went back to the one thing she was good at, cooking. So Mary couldn't go back to work under her real name. At this point, her name, Mary Mallon, had been published in newspapers all over the country. They were all over the story. The papers talked about how dirty and diseased she was, and the name Typhoid Mary had become a bit of a joke. It was a punchline, like with my doctor. So same thing, different times. So she knew nobody would hire Mary Mallon. So she had to use different names. For 5 years, Mary took jobs wherever she could find work. At restaurants, hotels throughout New York and New Jersey. And eventually she ended up employed as a cook at the Sloan Maternity Hospital. Yeah, maternity hospital. Now, in March of 1915, that hospital had an outbreak of typhoid. Oh no, Mary. Oh, what are you doing? I know. Now, 25 people, most of them were nurses and doctors, they became ill. And then it was said that 2 people had died. Now, the head gynecologist at Sloan Hospital picked up the phone and made a call to someone who was known for being great at tracking down disease outbreaks. That's right, Dr. Soper. Man. So Dr. Soper, he comes in to the maternity hospital, and this day that he comes in, Miss Brown, or AKA Mary Mallon, she wasn't working. She was off. So Dr. Soper was snooping around, and I guess he saw something that was very interesting. He saw a recipe that was written in Mary's handwriting. And I guess he immediately recognized the writing as Mary's, because she was she needed to pass the time while she was on that island, and she would write him threatening letters. So he was I recognize that handwriting. That's Mary. So Dr. Soper, he hung out and he waited for her to come back to the hospital. She had to come sometime. But Mary must have gotten word of what was going on, because she gone, vanished, poof. Bye. She's nope. So Dr. Soper and stuff, they were able to find Mary through friends. And I guess she was staying at a friend's house on Long Island. Now, police go out there and stuff. And apparently they recognized her because of her distinctive walk. Dr. Soper described how she, quote, walked more like a man than a woman. He just really did not like her. He's just bro, chill. Okay, but the cops show up to this friend's house where Mary was at, and they bring backup because she has a reputation for fighting. But Mary was surrounded once again, and she just didn't have that same fight in her anymore. She was 46. She was tired. They got her into custody, and then they ended up sending her back to that familiar little cottage on North Brother Island. And this time, she was there to stay. Now, at this point, well, yeah, no newspapers or anything. They had nothing nice to say about her. You know why? Because she was working at a maternity hospital, so around babies and pregnant women, knowing that she was infected, and to them, that was selfish, other words that I can't think of, and they just ripped her to shreds. Her life was officially over, and I think she knew it. So Mary would end up spending the next 23 years of her life living in isolation on the island. It was said that she kept busy sewing, crocheting, baking, reading, becoming friends with the staff. She really had no choice. There are only people around. And then in 1918, the hospital would allow Mary to go on day trips to New York. So she would go visit the few friends that she had left, and then she would return to the island in the evening. Which is weird if you think about it, because if they think she's infecting everyone, why would they let her leave still? That's weird. It's just confusing. It's I don't know, right? It's just what? Well, one of Mary's friends on the island was Dr. Alexandra Plavska. I think I know that. So she trained Mary in lab work, and the hospital gave her a job as a lab assistant. And Dr. Plowska would have like Mary over for dinner, and it would be like her and her daughter. Her daughter's name was Julie. And Julie described meeting Mary, saying she was a part of the family and we really loved her. Julie also described Mary as having, quote, loving eyes. And it was like, finally, someone had something nice to say. Geez, Louise. This whole time, it's just everyone was so mean. Julie also said that after Mary would leave, her mother would boil all the dishes, to disinfect them, just in case. Be safe. Well, one day in 1932, Mary didn't show up to work. And this was like very out of character for her. She was known to be like a reliable worker. She was never late. They were like, what else is she doing? She can't say she was stuck in traffic. So they go looking for her. And that day, they discover Mary on the floor of her cottage. I guess she was paralyzed after suffering from a stroke. Now, after this, she had lived in the hospital bed for like 6 years. She died in November of 1938 without ever experiencing symptoms of typhoid fever. Mary was buried in St. Raymond Cemetery in the Bronx. And you can actually go see it. If you go see it, take a picture and send it to me. Send me pictures. I'm always asking you guys to send me pictures and I never get any. So someone do it for me. Thank you. I want to see it. So in the end, Mary was linked to the infection of at least 122 people. Now, 5 of those people ultimately died of the disease. But here's something wild. You see, while Mary was living on North Brother Island, there was another carrier of typhoid who was living and working in New York. Yes. Now this man, his name was Tony Labella, he was also completely symptom-free. Now Tony was a farm worker, but after he was discovered as a carrier, he was forbidden from handling food. He was linked to 87 typhoid cases, and 2 of them ended in death. Now, this Tony guy, he didn't listen to instructions, and he went right back to work. He left New York and he went to New Jersey, and while he was there, he caused like 35 more cases, plus 3 more deaths. Now, he was held in isolation for 2 weeks, but then he was released, and he got to just live his life. So that was weird. And then there was also another man who worked in bakeries and restaurants who was also a carrier. He was told not to handle food, but he did it anyway. So when he was caught making a strawberry shortcake, which is super cute, right? He was brought before a judge. That judge said that he couldn't send him to jail and he would leave it up to the Department of Health. So this guy, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but he was not forced to live in any kind of isolation. He just got to live a normal, free life. So, what I'm getting at is it turns out like there were typhoid Johns, typhoid Tommies just running around the East Coast, and they never had their lives ruined like Mary. So why is that? Is the question. So in some cases, I guess the health department was more lenient with like these carriers because they were men with families to support. So they're like, it's fine. You could do whatever you want. Yeah, talk about a double standard. By the time Mary died, research showed that hundreds of people could be carriers of the disease while remaining symptom-free. And the only thing that was different was the way that she specifically was treated. Just her. Now, Mary Mallon is still known worldwide as Typhoid Mary. She was painted as a reckless and dirty woman who was either malicious or stupid in her spread of the disease. I mean, really, Mary was so much more than Typhoid Mary, She took a lot of crap from a lot of different people. From the rich family she worked for, to the health department, to the doctors. Mary had plenty of reason to be angry. Now, decades after her death, celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain, he wrote a book about Mary Mallon. I know, I read it. Do you follow me on Goodreads? I read it and I rated it. No, whatever. It was a really good book. Oh my God, it was really good. It was good. And in it, he relates to her as a chef. I mean, even pointing out like what a nightmare her job must have been. He writes, quote, "Had I worked in the homes of the rich and silly circa 1906, I would have murdered them in their beds with the nearest available blunt object. I was never tough enough to put up with what Mary put up with." End quote. Mary infected a lot of people with typhoid fever. Whether any of those she did knowingly, I doubt it, but we won't know for sure. But at the end of the day, she was locked up for it all the same. After reading this and learning about it, every time I wash my hands now, after I go to the bathroom or before I like make some food, I give a little nod and think of Miss Mary Mallon. The end. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, what a journey, huh? But next week, guess what? We are going to be talking about a very different kind of scandal. A scandal that has to do with an item that you and I probably never think about anymore. Matches. Yeah, matches. Matches. In the late 1800s, matches were found in pretty much everyone's homes. Now, people, they bought them from the store and they didn't give any thought about how they were made. That is, until one journalist wrote a horrifying expose on what was really going down in the factories. Now, workers, they were suffering from a painful and deadly disease, leaving parts of their faces literally falling off. Oh, it's wild. Yeah, all of this because of matches? Oh yes. So join us next week when we talk about the Matchstick Girls. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I want to hear your thoughts on Typhoid Mary, if she should have been locked up, isolated. What is the approach with that one? I don't know. I just feel bad for her. So sad. Well, friends, thanks for hanging out with me today. You can join me over on my YouTube where you can watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs. Hi. And while you're there, you can also catch my murder mystery and makeup. That's on Mondays. I love to hear you guys' reactions to today's story, so make sure to leave a comment below so I can see what you guys are saying, and your comment might even be featured in a future episode. Now let's read a couple of comments you guys have left me. Cheryl C2049 left me a comment saying, "I love Bailey's talking style, and she talks history like Gossiping Week with Bailey." Cheryl, thank you so much. Honestly, so I used to hate history. Oh my God. I think I got a D- in high school. Thank you so much. Because it was boring. But as I got older and I learned about it, I was like, oh my God, history is basically just all hot gossip and a lot of murder. It's wild, right? And it's so complicated in school, and it doesn't have to be. They make it so complicated. So I thank you for hanging out with me, and I'm glad you like my talking style. Steph Oliver left me a comment saying, "I hope Bailey feels an immense sense of pride when she says things like, 'We covered that in the XYZ episode, remember? Professor Sarian, I've learned so much.'" Oh, these are all so nice. Thank you. Steph, that is really so sweet of you. Honestly, we've covered so much here on Dark History, and I've learned so much, and you know what's cool? This is probably the coolest part about the whole Dark History thing, is if I get invited to a party or somewhere, the knowledge I can just drop at any moment on the most random things. I'm like, oh, you want to talk about Stalin? Listen, baby, let me tell you. Or oh, dildos? Do you know the history of dildos? I could just go on and on. Corn? You want to talk about corn? It's so fun. I'm a great party favor. Whatever, whatever. Yeah, but yeah, it's cool. I love learning. It's my favorite. Honey Badger Girl 77 left us an episode suggestion saying, oh no, a whole episode on Helen Keller would be wild. She had an incredible life. Honey Badger Girl 77, listen, I know. There has been so much back and forth about Helen Keller online. I agree. She definitely had an interesting life. What I've read so far. She met some interesting characters. She had some weird beliefs, but good ones too. And have you seen bumper stickers lately? There's been bumper stickers in my neighborhood that say Helen Keller denier. I want to know more about this. What is this about and why is it a thing? But Yeah, I think actually that would be a good idea. I know I've told this story a million times, but I'm going to tell you again just in case you haven't heard it, because it makes me laugh every time. I used to get Helen Keller and Lizzie Borden mixed up. You know Lizzie Borden, the one who took an axe and murdered her whole family? I thought she was blind and deaf. And I was like, what? She murdered her whole family with an axe and she's blind and deaf, and then she went on to like win awards and stuff? And I thought that to be true for the longest time, like embarrassingly long. But I know now, not the same person, but it's a fun thought. Huh? Okay. Thank you. Helen Keller. I'll write it down. There it is. I appreciate you guys so much for watching and engaging. So keep commenting because maybe you'll be featured in a future episode. And hey, if you don't know, Dark History is an Audio Boom original. Special thank you to our expert, Susan Campbell Bartoletti, author of Terrible Typhoid Mary, a true story of the deadliest cook in America. And I'm your host, Bailey Sarian. I hope you have a good day, you make good choices. I'll be talking to you guys real soon. Goodbye. Okay, before the pirate community comes for me, I know there are tons of pirates I could have included in this episode, but I just picked two that I really loved, and they happen to be women. I never heard of women pirates. I didn't even know that like it was a thing, right? So when I saw this, I was like, oh, incredible. When you think about it, tons of men pirates, but there were plenty of women who were pirates as well. They're just forgotten by history, you know? Now, what is a pirate? A pirate is defined as a person who attacks and robs ships at sea. I personally couldn't believe how much power this first pirate had. She's considered by many as the most successful pirate in history. And she was in power during the late 1700s in China. Listen, being a woman back then, it was extremely difficult to get any sort of power or respect on land or sea. So this woman was Chang Yi Sao, and she was born in 1775. Not much is known about her early life, but what we do know is that she was born to like the everyday person, not people with power who historians seem to like to write about. What we do know is that she was born in China during a truly chaotic time. Between 1750 and 1800, the population of China increased from 181 million people to 297 million people. Essentially, like an entire new country got added to society. Now this matters because the city was completely packed to the brim. It was like people were just spilling out, like where do they stay, you know? So people actually found ways to live on boats in the water because there just wasn't enough space for them on land. So an entire group of people started living on the water, and they were called the Tonka. Tonka? The chimp? Tonka the chimp. I know, I didn't think Tonka the chimp was gonna be here. And Chang Yi Sao was actually one of them. She grew up literally on water. She knew her way around a boat pretty dang well. She knew the water. She knew how it worked. She knew what it was like. You know, living in such a big crowded city gave her a lot of street smarts. And according to records, her first job was as a sex worker. And this wasn't just to make money. She knew the only way that she could move up in society was to gain a little bit of power. And the way that she did this was by learning secrets about the local businessmen that she had sex with. Some say she would strategically trade these secrets so people knew she was the person to go to for important information. And sometimes I think, like, if I weren't doing what I'm doing now, I think I would be a sex worker, but then I would try and make it to the top and try and get secrets on everyone so I could blackmail them. That's what I would do. Or go to college. Being a woman, we can do those types of things. Okay, anyways, this created a position of power for her. And she really like shows her true colors during this time. She used the influence she had to protect other sex workers around her since, you know, it was a very dangerous job. She could have been selfish and blackmailed people, Bailey, but instead she made sure that the men knew not to mess with her or the sex workers around her, or else she'd spill their secrets. Do you want that, Brad? Do you want everyone to know what you do alone in your room, Brad? Do they know that you're fucking your cats, Brad? Around the year 1800, she is now in her 20s, and her life completely changes. She meets a man. A man named Cheng Yi. So, Cheng Yi Sao has managed to make a name for herself through sex work. She learns to trade secrets, and she also creates a powerful community of allies by protecting her fellow sex workers. Then, around 1800, Cheng Yi Sao's life completely changes when she meets a man named Cheng Yi. I know. I was like, what are the odds? They have the same name? But this is actually where she gets her name. We don't know what her birth name was before she married. Back then, it was like when you married someone, you just took your man's name and like that was it. That's your name now. You have no name. Your name is your man's name. So she goes down in history as Cheng Yi Sao. So that's what we're calling her. Sorry, girl. So at some point, she meets this man, right, Cheng Yi, and she's getting to know him. And she's like, hey, so what do your parents do? Like, what do your parents do? And he's like, we have a family business. And she's like, oh my God, that's crazy. What's the business? Like farming or something? And he goes, no, we're pirates. Pirates? Yes, Cheng Yi came from a family of pirates, and they'd been pirates for over 100 years. It was in his blood. Now, to normal girls, this might scare them off. But Cheng Yi Sao, she's not like normal girls. She was like, what? Hot. I'm in. And the two get married. So he and his family were actually just part-time pirates in the spring and the summer. In the fall and winter, these pirates were actually fishermen. In China, fishermen were not living the best lives. In the spring and summer, there were terrible monsoons, which made it almost impossible to earn a living by fishing. So the workers had to find other sources of income. So they turned into pirates. Professor Diane Murray describes the life of a fisherman at this time as, quote, so miserable that for many, a successful pirate foray was the sole hope for a better life. Now, this marriage wasn't exactly about love, you know? There was some love between Cheng Yi and Cheng Yi Sao, but the real reason they got married was for business and opportunity, as many people did, you know, back then. Cheng Yi Sao knew being a pirate's wife would bring in lots of money and also power, things she'd been working toward her whole life. So she made a point to not only be a supportive wife, but one that her pirate husband depended on. She would help her husband strategize on what places to take over, what ships to attack, who to kidnap, and how to defend themselves. That's kind of cute, honestly. Like, honey, what do you think? I think we should like invade this place. I think we should like rob this place. They're bonding. She would often negotiate deals on behalf of her husband because she was much better at dealing with people than like he was. And as it turns out, the two of them were an unstoppable force at sea. So things are going great for the couple. Cheng Yi Sao is even given a son. Her husband, given a son, listen to this. Her husband kidnaps and enslaves a 15-year-old boy. His name was Bao. So pirate kidnappings were so common back then, the government had to invent laws around what was happening. If you were kidnapped by pirates, you were either killed, held for ransom, or you were forced to join the crew as a pirate. So when 15-year-old Bao joins the crew, Cheng Yi Sao takes him under her wing. She even makes him like her little protege. I mean, Bao didn't have much choice. He was kidnapped and forced to be there. So he's like, this is my life now. Great. Legend has it, Bao is initiated into the crew through something called homosexual liaison. We don't know exactly what that entailed. This was interpreted by historians to mean that they probably forced Bao to have sex with the pirates on the boat. Now, Bao follows around his adopted father and mother, doing whatever they order him to do. He even helps when it comes to looting towns and ships and stealing their gold. It sounds so fake, right? I know, I always think that too. Like, I can't believe this was real. So, the parents, they're impressed with how Bao was doing. They're like, this kid's good. I'm glad we abducted him and enslaved him and then had him raped. Good job, you guys. But they decide to make him the captain of his own ship. And this is perfect timing because it was 1802, if you didn't know, and Chang Yi was called away on a family affair. Now, according to legend, someone in his family dies and leaves him a huge fleet of ships with thousands of crew members. Around the same time, there's a major change in the pirate world. For the first time, multiple pirate crews and ships are banding together. This is because nearby in Vietnam, a new law that would prosecute pirates goes into effect. So after inheriting his family's pirate ships on the way back home, Chang Yi also picks up these pirates that were trying to escape this new law. He's coming back with quadruple the army that he had before. And it's okay, great. So most wives would be like, honey, you didn't tell me you were bringing so many people over. I would have cleaned up a bit. But Chang Ying Sao, she was like, oh, fuck yeah, now we're stacked with power. There's so many people and ships to manage. She's now the one calling the shots. She's like, yes, yes. And she becomes the mastermind behind her husband's pirate conquests. So Chang Yi returns from his journey with a giant pirate crew, and since he's always out on the ocean fighting other pirates, Chang Yi Sao becomes the mastermind behind the whole operation. So within 2 years, she has control of over 70,000 pirates and 400 ships. Damn, I know. So naturally, word began to spread that Chang Yi Sao was running this huge operation and she's the shit, okay? And her ships start getting attacked left and right by rival pirates. They're pissed. Who's this woman? In response, Chang Yi Sao decides to create something kind of unheard of within the pirate community, a rule book. And this wasn't just to be annoying, She knew the pirates had to stick together in order to win their battles, or else their army was going to fall apart. So she creates this rule book. This is why you need a woman, because we're organized, okay? And you need rules in place to thrive. So, for example, she had a rule to never take treasure that's not yours. It was essentially finders keepers when it comes to stolen treasure, but Chang Yi Sao said it was against the code to steal your friend's booty. Interesting how it applies to certain things, but not other. Rape is okay, but don't steal their money when you do it. So if you're stealing your friend's treasure, it's going to create distrust on the ship and people are going to turn against each other. And in this new rule book, if you did get caught stealing from your fellow pirate, you were going to be sentenced to death by decapitation. Her rules end up being really successful. And by 1805, it's signed by all of the members of their crew. And people genuinely like being under Chang Yi Sao's rule. She gave the orders at the top, and her husband was essentially boots on the ground, manning the men on the ships. But just as things are going well for the two, things take a bad turn. In 1807, Chang Yi dies. Now, we don't know how he dies, but there are some records that show he may have fallen off his ship during a bad storm and drowned. Other people think he was killed by rivals, and that would make sense. Either way, the death was unexpected, and many people outside the pirate community expected Chang Yi's pirate empire to fall or fail after he died, but it didn't, because guess who's in charge, bitch? Chang Yi Sao. She's like, that's right. What? Oh yeah. In fact, as soon as her husband died, Chang Yi Sao was like, I'm not going anywhere, bitch. She wasn't about to be the crying widow who spent the rest of her life crying. She immediately beelines for her husband's closest advisors and essentially tells them, hi, so I'm going to take over the world, and let's just say it would be a good idea for you to support that. They agree. Because listen, if they don't agree, she's going to decapitate them, they've seen this woman at work for almost a decade. They're not about to mess with her. She needs to essentially get all of the crew on the ships to back her, right? So she's goes to them, haven't I made your life better? Why would you leave? I'm amazing. I've done great things, right? And essentially, the crews all agree, the pirates, and they're like, yes, ma'am, you can stay. So everyone is on her side. She's got the advisors, she's got the pirates, but she's still missing one extremely important key to keeping her power. A husband. I know. Even though she was in charge of all these men, it was still a different time. And they wouldn't trust a woman without like a husband back then. So the pressure's on. She needs to find a husband. And honestly, when you think about it, she's got a big crew. So she's got variety, but she's looking around. She's like, if I squint, you're kind of cute. Goes the other one. No teeth, peg leg. Okay, what about that guy over here? Oh, no. You know, it's just the options were limited. So she gets to thinking, shit, like, what do I need a husband. And she's looking around, her eyes land on Bao. 21 years old at this point. Remember Bao? The son that they stole? Yeah. He had been working along her and her husband the entire time, and he had proven himself to be an incredible captain, pirate, and lover. That's right. Bao and his mother were allegedly having a hot and heavy affair the whole time her husband was off traveling and dealing with other pirates. Now, to her, Bao was the obvious choice because he was loyal. She knew he could handle day-to-day operations. She would be the brains, right? And he would be the brawny man. And no one amongst the crew objects to this. I mean, they're probably like, okay, weird, but cool. When Cheng Yi-sao officially takes over with her new husband / son, she makes a few changes to the pirate rules. Mainly, she focused on women and villagers. For example, if you were a villager who helped the pirates during a raid, you couldn't be harmed or stolen from. If a pirate did harm a helpful villager, they'd be beheaded. Also, the pirates weren't allowed to rape or abuse the woman they encountered during their raids, which is nice. If they wanted to have sex with a woman, they had to get married. All right. So they found a loophole and they were like, we'll just fuck each other. If anyone was having sexual relations, it had to be reported to Cheng Yi-sao, or else you would lose your head. Cheng Yi-sao always found a way to control everything from behind the scenes. One of the ways she maintained control was through religion. So the pirates, surprisingly, were very religious. They believed in some type of Chinese folk religion, and they used to pray to the gods before doing anything. Now, most of the pirates were so religious that a temple would be built on one of like their largest pirate ships. So she would send Bao down to the ship temple and tell the priestesses whatever her plans were. So when the pirates would show up to the temple and pray for guidance, the priestesses would tell them to do whatever Cheng Yi-sao said. During her reign, the pirate world is living in its glory days. An official historian of the Pirate Federation wrote, quote, "Peace and quietness was not known by the inhabitants of the seacoast for a period of 10 years. I wonder what the fish and whales thought and stuff. They're like, whoa, shit's crazy up there. Anyone? No? Okay. Cheng Yi-sao was known to be relentless. She never let these pirates rest. I mean, they killed over 12,000 people during their raids over the years, but it wasn't enough. If there was an opportunity to steal someone's riches or take over, she ordered her pirates to do so. Despite that, these pirates were never scared of anyone's ships coming their way. They always knew under Cheng Yi-sao's rule, they had nothing to worry about. They were the ones who were the threat. But finally, the party had to come to an... Oh, you know what's funny? This is a complete side note, but this reminded me of... do you guys have that app Next Door? It's like where you know, people in your neighborhood can post like what's going on in the neighborhood. So a lot of the times they'll post like, hey, suspicious person outside, whatever. So funny story, I went on a walk. And I'm tattooed. I don't know if you know this, tattooed, and I had my hat on. And I was on my walk and I saw this car. Obviously a hoarder's car, okay? It was filled to the brim with stuff. So I took a moment, I was like looking in the car, I was looking around, and I was looking in the car, just like, damn. Anyways, so I mind my business, whatever. The next day, I go on the neighborhood app and there's like a screen grab of me from someone's camera. I was the suspicious person outside looking in people's vehicles. And in that moment, I was like, if I'm the threat, then that means I am safe. You know? Like, I felt oddly safe. Like, people are afraid of me. That's kind of like, that's great. I'm the threat, was my takeaway from that. And then I left a comment like, listen here, you bitch. Maybe if you cleaned out your car, I wouldn't be stopping and looking. I'm actually your neighbor. I'm looking at you right now. You're on the toilet because I can see directly into your window because you refuse to get curtains. Getting back to the story. The party, you know, great. They're on top of the world. It has to come to an end, as all stories do. And Chang Yi-sao she was too powerful. All these pirate captains became obsessed with getting rid of her, killing her, and taking over her army. In 1809, she was on a ship that was being targeted by the Chinese Navy and Portuguese ships. They teamed up to take her down on the open sea. They fired at her ship for weeks. They tried setting it on fire, and a lot of people on the ship ended up dying, but they never caught her. She finally managed to sail away unharmed after 3 months of constant battle. Now, even though this victory was like a flex, you know? She's like, yeah, well. It was also a sign to her that this violence would never come to an end. The government was focused on killing her and would team up with anyone to do so. And we don't know exactly how old she was, but, you know, at this time, like, she wasn't a young woman anymore, you know, and the pirate life was no longer for her. Maybe she's ready to settle down or something. So she began to bargain with the Chinese government. When she walked into the meeting room, people were freaking out. They're like, oh my God, is that pirate bitch? I heard about that bitch. That's crazy. So she came in and she's like, look, I have no plans to apologize. And also, I'm not going to face any consequences for my actions. Thank you so much. Essentially, she's like, you're going to listen to me, or like me and my pirates are going to go back to ruining your life. Brad, remember? Because I remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers. So after a long negotiation, the government agreed that she and any of the pirates who worked for her could walk away without any charges. Chang Yi-sao made sure that she and Bao got the protection they needed. She made the government agree that Bao could continue to lead a group of about 80 ships working in the salt trade industry. As for herself, she got out at the right time. She served no jail time because she retired rather than being captured. And after decades at sea, she was a very rich woman. Later in life, rumor has it she used that money to open up a little tea room. That's cute. She had her retirement business going on, just living her life. 20 years later, in 1844, at the age of 69, Chang Yi-sao died. Aww. Though on paper it said she was the wife of an army general, she was so much more than that. Ugh. Yeah, she was a wife, but she also died as the most successful pirate of all time. And that deserves a snap, am I right? Are you wearing a cowboy hat? Okay, good for you. Honestly, though, I'm waiting for that movie. Where's that movie? A badass woman pirate? Come on. We can leave out the part about her fucking her son, but, you know, pretty cool. Well, not all pirates get a happy ending. Because of that, a lot of these stories get lost to history. But this next story is all about a pirate who made a name for herself, not because of her riches, but because of how much of a badass she was. I can't believe that no one has made a movie about her life because it's wild. So have you heard of Anne Bonny? No? Okay, well, this is the next pirate we're talking about, a woman. And she was born in Ireland in the late 1700s. Sorry about that. We don't have a birth date because Anne's birth was kind of scandalous. She was a child of an affair. And you know how that goes, especially in the 1700s. You don't mention that. Okay. Anne's father, William, had an affair with his housekeeper while his wife was traveling. Word started spreading around town, and William tried his best to cover up the scandal. And when Anne was born, he dressed up Anne as a boy and claimed that he had a son with his wife, not the housekeeper. William even started calling her Andy. This went on through like a good chunk of Anne's childhood, but what we do know is that they did not buy William's story. William ended up moving away from the British colonies to North America so he, Anne, and her mother could start a brand new life away from scandal. But their life in America wasn't much better. William struggled to find a job and make a good living, and Anne, she struggled with her identity. In America, she wasn't Andy anymore. Now she was Anne. Very confusing. She'd spent her whole childhood acting and being treated like a boy. She was the opposite of a dainty lady in society, and she was known for like temper outbursts and violence, stuff like that. Anne did find her place with a very particular group of people in town, the pirates. Now, it's unclear where she met the pirates, but we do know she loved that they were bad boys. William was so upset his daughter was associating with these types of people, but William's disappointment didn't stop Anne. She actually ends up marrying a pirate named James Bonney. That's where her signature last name comes from. William, her dad, was livid. He actually ended up disowning Anne because of this, and he kicked her out of his house. Rumor has it, Anne was pissed. She knocked over a candlestick and set fire to her father's house and his land. Her new husband, James, he wasn't like a superstar when it came to the world of pirates. He was actually kind of just basic pirate. He not very high up, she loved him. And she even joined him on pirate journeys on his ship. Eventually, Anne and James end up in the Bahamas. They traveled there because the Bahamas was considered a safe haven for pirates. But apparently, there was a new governor in town, and he wasn't so happy with his town being a vacation destination for pirates, So the governor starts offering money to any pirate who became an informant for him. And he wanted to do this so he could nail down the pirates in town. And so James takes the bait. Oh yes, Anne's husband becomes a snitch. This totally goes against pirate code, babe. Anne took the pirate life very seriously and was not happy with her scum of the earth husband doing this to her fellow pirate communities, okay? So, Anne's in the Bahamas. She's not happy with her life. She's not happy with her husband. Her dad sucks. She's in a bad place. She's in a dark place right now. And then, out of nowhere, a man named Calico Jack walks onto the island. Jack is the head bitch in charge of all the pirates, okay? And when he shows up to town, immediately there's like a vibe shift. Unlike her lame husband, Jack commands respect from everyone he meets, and he even takes Anne's breath away. Take my breath away. When Anne saw Jack, she's like, yes, that's what I want. That man. And when a girl has her eye on the prize, she's gonna get that prize, He was the most handsome, suave man Anne had ever seen. After she probably saw his dick outline too. Just kidding. So she's a little flirty with him. She's like, Jack, that's so crazy. You do stuff with the boat and stuff, Jack. That's crazy. Pirate stuff. Yeah. Oh my God. So yeah, that's crazy. So they're flirting with each other, and then they end up falling madly in love. Jack is like, babe, I love you. Let's get married. And Anne's like, I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never. And she doesn't. So remember, she is still technically married. Well, Jack and Anne are now in love. And she's like, look, I'm still technically married. And Jack's like, don't worry, baby. I'll handle it. So Jack goes up to James and he's like, look, I'll pay you to divorce your wife. James at first refuses. So Jack and Anne, they look at each other and they're like, F it, who cares? We don't even need your approval. We were just trying to be polite. And they end up getting married, or they elope. They're pirates. There's no rules. They can do that. So after they elope, they decide to get the hell out of town. And in order to slip away without anyone noticing, Anne taps into her childhood days and she goes full Andy. She dresses completely like a man. Okay. And when people, just like when she was a kid, people would just buy it. Anne leaves with Jack and joins his pirate crew. They don't want to risk anyone knowing what's going on, so they don't even tell the pirate crew on the ship about Anne being a woman, okay? Her name is now Andy. I know, my first question, and I know this is like so left field maybe, but my first thought was, what happens when you're on your period? Like, how do you keep that a secret? Just stuff your pants as best as you can? I guess you could keep it a secret, but it would suck, you know? Either way, Anne, or Andy, was like a valuable member of the crew. And this was allegedly proven in 1720 when Jack's ship raids another ship and takes some of the crew hostage. Now, the next part of Anne's story is mostly based on a book by Captain Charles Johnson called A General History of Pirates, but he didn't know them personally. So, like, many of the stories are based on just pirate legend, I guess. But here's what allegedly went down. Jack sends Anne to seduce the kidnapped pirates, you know, to make them cooperate better, I guess. I mean, it would work, I think. I don't know. So Anne, she takes off her Andy outfit and gets to work seducing the men one by one. She's like, oh my gosh, do you like a shoulder? What about an ankle? Have you seen an ankle, Mr. Pirate Man? My wrists are so delicate and small. That's how I flirt. So they're like, oh yeah, show me that ankle. Until one of the pirates refuses to cooperate. So Anne is like, are you into men? Because I could get some, yeah. She's like, just doing everything she can to seduce him, you know? But this pirate is just resisting. Like, he's clearly uncomfortable. Well, so Anne is putting on the move. She's like, yeah. Anything? Nothing? No boner? Okay. Suddenly, this person that she's trying to seduce rips open their shirt. I know, I was like, okay. Guess what pops out? Titties. She's like, oh shit. The pirate was a woman just like Anne. What are the chances of that? Her name was Mary Reed, and makes Anne promise she'll keep her secret. She's like, dude, I'm low-key, don't tell anyone, okay? So Anne is like, don't worry, I got you. No wonder you weren't turned on. I forgive you now. They're in the same boat, you know, literally. So the two actually become close friends. Many believe they took things to the next level and became lovers because they were spending a lot of time together. Apparently, they were spending so much time together that Jack starts to get a little jealous, okay? And even a little pissed. So according to rumors, Jack breaks into Mary's room one night and pulls out a knife to slit her throat. Remember, nobody knows that Mary is a woman, so he's getting jealous thinking that Mary's a man, okay? So Mary's in bed like, wait, no, I'm a woman. Jack, I have boobs. You know, trying to show Jack like, I'm a woman. And Jack is like, oh, like shocked, obviously, okay? He's like, let me make sure. I think, yeah, you must be a woman. Now, we don't know if he confronted her about like how much time she was spending with Anne, but because she was a woman, Jack spares Mary. I'm sure he was actually relieved because he was thinking like Mary and his girl were having an affair, you know? So he's probably like, oh my God, that's crazy. My bad. Now, despite the secrets, Anne and Mary are an incredible team. They're like Mary-Kate and Ashley of pirate ships, okay? The two of them, along with Jack, decide to expand their pirate operation and make it even bigger. So Anne, Mary, and Jack were absolutely killing it as being pirates. They got off to a rocky start, you know. Eventually, they figured it out and they made a great team. And they wanted to expand their pirate operation so they could increase their wealth. So Jack takes the ship back to the Bahamas, where he and his crew steal a new ship called the William. After stealing the ship, they gather a new crew and set out to sea. Now at this point, there's no hiding that Anne and Mary were women. They just like stopped fully disguising themselves. We don't know the exact details of it all, but they stopped. And they ended up becoming like high-ranking members of the crew, despite their gender. For months in 1720, their ship causes absolute terror all over the Caribbean, taking down ships and raiding villages. Anne and Mary work really well together as a team. I mean, they're both fearless and they share the dirty work. Most importantly, they knew how to fight. Oh yeah. They were each known to carry a machete and a pistol. And since they were high-ranking members of the crew, they were even allowed to order prisoners to be murdered. Jack, Anne, Mary, and the crew raided at least 10 ships in just the month of September of that year alone. Now, these missions were mostly led by Anne and Mary. They're raiding towns for their gold and even taking prisoners for ransom. Anne and Mary, especially, they were just ruthless. One of the prisoners later described them as very active on board and, quote, willing to do anything. When people saw the William out on open water, they were terrified because they knew that ship did not fuck around. But in October 1720, Anne, Mary, and Jack end up on a quote-unquote wanted pirates list in the Boston Gazette. So now there was a price on their heads. On top of that, this crew had also made a ton of enemies. They pissed everyone off along the way, so things were just starting to go downhill really fast. In the same month, their ship is attacked by another government ship, and the government came armed and ready to fight this crew. I mean, the William had such a terrifying reputation. They weren't going to take any chances. But when the government's crew jumps onto Jack's ship, no one fights back. Apparently, the entire crew was absolutely plastered, and they were all hiding in fear below deck. I mean, if you're gonna go out, I'd go out drunk too, why not? So these people, the crew, everyone was just caught drunk-handed. Apparently, the only people who fought back were Anne and Mary. At some point, Mary gets enough time to stop and yell to the men, quote, "If there's a man among ye, you'll come up and fight like the man ye are to be. Ye." And I guess no one answers. Just crickets. She's like, all right, great. So Mary, she's like, you know what? You guys are pissing me the hell off. So she ends up firing her pistol into the ship at her own crew. Yeah, she kills one of the men. Hopefully that will wake them up, by shooting into your men. It'll get them to maybe get it together and yeah. So she kills the guy and she's like, F you guys, whatever. And she goes back into battle. Mary and Anne, they fought a good fight, but at the end of the day, it was just two of them against an entire crew. So everyone gets captured and put on trial in Jamaica. All of the men, including Jack, get immediate sentences to be hanged because they're women. Anne and Mary's cases are taken to trial, but Mary and Anne, they were well-known violent pirates, so nothing they could say or do would make the jury be on their side. So they go to court, they do the thing, blah, blah, blah. Jury comes back with a verdict. Anne and Mary are sentenced to death by hanging. People during this time were cheering like, yeah, kill the pirate girls, blah, blah, blah. Then Anne and Mary drop a bomb. They look at each other, then turn to the jury. Well, what about our children? Well, you mention a child, and bitch, the audience goes wild. Legend has it that both women were pregnant by Jack. Pregnancy was kind of like a get-out-of-death-free card, because the people, the jury decided to let them plead their bellies, aka wait out their pregnancies in prison rather than be sent to death. Okay, loophole, love that. So they go to jail, whatever, and sadly, Mary dies from illness not long into her prison sentence. She's out. Anne, on the other hand, disappears. The ending of her story is a complete mystery. We don't know if she gave birth. Hell, we don't even know if she was really pregnant. We don't know if she died around the same time as Mary. We don't know. Her name stops appearing in any documents after she gets sent to prison. So rumor has it, Anne was broken out of the prison and smuggled to America back to her father. The idea is popular because of a book inspired by Anne's life called Mistress of the Seas. What we do know is that there was no recorded execution of Anne. She was just gone, disappeared. I like to think that maybe Anne escaped from jail and found herself churning butter somewhere, just living a normal life, thinking about her wild, crazy pirates days, but pretending to play normal. My fantasy. Here's what I learned. I have been told all my life that pirates were drunk, sloppy men, but Nay, that is not true. There are many women who were very powerful leaders on the sea that nobody seems to talk about. And honestly, I don't see why they don't. These make some great stories, okay? I'm waiting for a movie. I would watch this one. I don't like pirate movies, but sorry, don't come for me. I'll go on Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride, only because it's hot outside and like that place is really cool. Like it's cool, like AC. But the ride is kind of boring and it smells. Sorry. People love that ride. I don't get it. I'm like, whatever. Listen, we can talk about pirates all day, every day. So if you want a part 2, let me know down below. I would love to do that because I learned so much. I don't care about, which is sad to say, but I don't care about like the men's side of stories when it comes to pirates. But for some reason, the women's side is really interesting. Is that sexist? Well, anyhow, hopefully they'll be bleep, blop, bloop, fill in the blank. Bye. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial cities in America. Many people refer to it as the party capital of the world. That's right. We're talking about Sin City. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And it got me thinking, like, how the hell did one town in the middle of the desert become one of the most famous places in the world? Join me next time when we talk about the dark history of Las Vegas. Yeah. I'll be wearing the same thing. Sorry about that. I'd love to hear your guys' reactions to today's story, so make sure to leave a comment down below so I can see what you guys are saying, and your comment might even be featured in a future episode. Now let's read a couple of comments you guys have left me, yeah? Laura Riley 308 left me a comment saying, "Respect your work, Dark Bailey." Thank you, Laura. You know, I've been called a lot of things, but no one ever has called me Dark Bailey. I'll take it. Thank you so much. Thank you. We put in a lot of time and thought and energy into these episodes, and I appreciate you for acknowledging all of the hard work. Maisie Days 9 left me a comment saying, "My guinea pig and I never miss an episode." Maisie, I love that for you. What's your guinea pig's name? Cute. I love that name. How old? What is a guinea? I don't know what a guinea pig is. I would like to get one though. Anyways, I love that, and I hope you guys are having like a cute little like matching pajamas. You and the guinea pig, and then you can watch. Please send me a picture. Thank you. Justy Kaz Barai Tight 7252 left us an episode suggestion. Aloha, Bailey. Thank you so much for your history lessons. Also, may I suggest a topic for another dark history? Video games. Brutal ones. Does it increase violence or decrease? You are the best. Oh my gosh. Aloha. Are you in Hawaii? Where? Send me pics. What's it look like? Can I come over? Let me know. Invite me. Invite me over to your houses, goddammit. I'm trying to come visit. I need to get out of here. Going crazy. There's a girl stuck in a box on YouTube. They won't let me out. Anyways, aloha! Hi, great idea. I know nothing when it comes to modern day video games, but I think it could be an interesting deep dive because I know they've done studies, right, about the brain and like if it does have an effect, and that could be a really interesting conversation. I stick to Mario Kart. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Anywho, thank you for the suggestion. I really appreciate it, and I love when you guys suggest stuff. Love it, so keep it coming. Thank you guys for watching and engaging. I appreciate you. Keep on commenting because maybe you'll be featured or maybe you won't, but I love it either way. Did you know you can join me over on my YouTube where you can actually watch these episodes on Thursday after the podcast airs? And while you're there, you can also catch my murder, mystery, and makeup. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe because I'm here for you all the time. And hey, if you don't know, Dark History is an Audio Boom original. Special thank you to our expert, Laura Sook Duncombe, author of Pirate Women and A Pirate's Life for She. That's good. And I'm your host, Bailey Sarian. I hope you have a good day, you make good choices, and I'll be talking to you guys soon. Goodbye.